All right. Hello, everybody. It is 11:45 a.m., September 14, 2023. Today is going to be the second AIP conference for Palantir in the past 6 months. They introduced AIP in April of 2023. June, they had their first conference. And a couple months later, September 14th, we are here for their second conference of the year. AIP is going to determine the trajectory of Palantir as a business and a company. So this conference is incredibly important. And as a shareholder, obviously we're excited just as enthusiasts of the company and of technology writ large to see what they've got cooking up. I'm here with Arnie, who is the author of PalantirBullets.com. If you are not subscribed to PalantirBullets.com, you should subscribe to PalantirBullets.com. It's the best Substack in the world to understand more about Palantir. His Twitter will also be in the description. And outside of, him being good on Palantir, he's just like one of the smartest people in the world that I personally know. I'm not just saying that because he's here. He knows how smart I think he is. So heavily recommend following him on Twitter and checking it out on Substack. Arnie, are you excited about AIP?
I'm really looking forward for that. Not only because it is nice to actually learn more, because we are not tech guys, so we need to rely on the company to actually provide insight. Unfortunately, we can't really talk with so many people, like people in the industry. So this is the best we can get. And having customers explaining directly to other customers why this is important is actually very important for us also to understand how valuable it is what we're doing, because maybe the clients are excited, but they solve minor problems. But if on the other hand, we realize that these customers are actually solving big problems, intrinsically also for us, that's an information, because right now, Carp said that we have no pricing strategy, but how these things work is that if you unlock a huge amount of value, then over time, if the customer wants to keep using your service, guess what? You have pricing power to say, you run for free for 6 months, you unlocked a 1 billion saving. Let's give us like 10% of that huge value you unlocked. Would it be reasonable from the client standpoint? I would say absolutely yes. So to me, these events are really important, not only to have a sense of the product, but more importantly, to understand how big the problems are that Palantir is actually solving. Because if Palantir keeps solving big problem here, big problem there, big problem even there, even if they're not paid immediately, we know that that value unlocked will be recognized, and it's only a matter of time. Therefore, creating potentially for us an opportunity if we see the stock dropping, while we know, given all this time we spent together at this live stream, but also at Palantir Weekly on Twitter, we realize, hey, the market is bearish, but we have information that things are actually evolving in the right direction. And that would be a reason to be excited rather than, the stock is dropping.
And that's the beauty of retail investing. That's the beauty of building this retail community. That's why, we're so thankful people tune into the content and they enjoy and they find value from what we're creating, which is really, how do you get an edge on Wall Street? You have to know some stuff that the big guys don't. And the big guys are smart, but they're not always the smartest, i.e. Tesla, i.e. Palantir, and it's run up this year. And so the opportunity lies, as CodeSrep said a couple of weeks ago, where you know something where other people don't, which means you have to do the deep due diligence to understand, hey, if a stock drops, but I, with my own eyes, am seeing the biggest companies in the world say that this thing is very valuable, which means is it worth 5 million, 10 million, 50 million? They're doing 5 billion a year in revenue. How much are they willing to pay for that? Do I see the future acceleration of growth for some of the most amazing technology in the world? And am I willing to take a bet on that because I understand that myself? So I think that's why this conference is also incredibly important. Arnie, we got 10 minutes till it starts. I want to ask you another question about the conference, but before that, let's do a fun one. Elon and our friend Carp were sitting coincidentally next to each other yesterday. Out of all the people they could have sat with, they sat next to each other. What is your take on why Elon and Carp are smiling sitting next to each other?
How random do you think it was, actually?
So part of me says it was pretty random, but the other part of me is like, it wasn't random. Did Elon want to sit next to Mark Zuckerberg? I don't think so, right?
No. You'll be next to Mark? No. Directly on the cage.
Yeah, I like, yeah, exactly. If I'm the richest guy in the world, and I'm like, you want me to take time out of my life to come to DC, I'm not sitting next to Zuckerberg, right? Like, so I think there's a little bit of, choice involved here, maybe.
I also think, At the end of the day, you can be billionaire, but the instinct of children is still there.
I love it. Okay. A couple of let me read off the names that are presenting today. You and I know over the past week, we did a ton of due diligence on some of these companies that are actually presenting. So my question to you is, what is the company you are the most excited about? Let me read them off again. We have CPKC, which is a huge railroad company, HCA Healthcare, which is, I think, one of the biggest companies on the list, one of the largest private healthcare insurers in the United States, Sintra, Eaton, and Miller's Alehouse. Oh, interesting. I think they took Sampo Insurance off of that. Oh, they must have updated it. Yeah. So Sampo probably is not able to make it today. But we knew Sampo was there, so maybe they're replacing them. That's interesting. That's an update. We didn't. Sampo was there. They either took them off and replaced them.
It was there. Yeah.
Yeah. Or either it's still a 3-hour conference, so I think someone's going to replace them, or maybe this PDF just not as updated. But any of these companies that you're interested to see?
Well, as a personal level, my curiosity brings me to Miller's Alehouse for the reason that I had no idea about this chain, and I'm really curious to see how Foundry and more in particular AIP is actually deployed to this food chain. Is it actually good?
I don't think I've ever been there, but for those that don't know, it's a burger joint in America, from Florida. But they're all over the United States. And yeah, they sell chicken wings, and they're like, yeah, we're using AIP.
Chicken wings and AIP for a win. But in terms of as an investor, the one that intrigues me most is HCA Healthcare, for the simple reason that there is the biggest contract potentially arriving in exactly 2 weeks. And we're talking about the NHS deal. So maybe the things are already chosen, because I would say, come on, after 2 years, 3 years with Palantir, you realize if you want to deal with them or not. Maybe it's only a political matter of having the pill digested by who wants it to be digested. But I would say the explosion in healthcare links that we just assisted, the fact that last week we had the partnership with Gemelli Policlinico, the biggest hospital in Italy.
Did you know about them? Because you're in Italy. Did you know their name or no?
Well, that hospital, yes, is definitely among the most important. That and San Raffaele are the most famous ones. And not only because they're big, but also because they have a very strong research center. So that's why I say these partnerships with the hospital are very interesting. And it seems for each hospital, we see a part of what Palantir wants to bring to the NHS. What I mean with that is we had, hope I'm not confusing the two, but we had Tampa that was showing operational efficiency. Then we had Cleveland showing how Foundry helped them prepare with the hurricanes. So operations, prevention, now with the Policlinico Gemelli is more on deep on research. And maybe with this HCA, we will see a slightly different angle. So all combined, it's like
on top of that, you got Cardinal, which was supply chain medical health partnerships, right? So there's just so much stuff in the healthcare space that it's really starting to play out in regards to any of that thesis. So your argument is HCA is the most interesting given the NHS deal that's coming up.
In my opinion, yes. What about you?
I would agree. HCA is the most. I mean, that Miller's Alehouse, that's like curiosity killed the cat. That one's getting all of us. I think we're like, how the fuck? Like burgers, really? But it's going to be pretty exciting. Let me get your thoughts on the deal that just came out yesterday. We partnered with Titan, with Babcock, which is a Titan industrial defense company headquartered in the UK. Any reasoning for why you think that deal, they announced it the day before AIPCon?
Well, I don't think the timing of these press releases are just random. I think the office there wants to time things in a matter so that they help craft the narrative. So it's like they have the announcement ready and they want to drop things when it is actually convenient to do so. Think of it as an influencer. Maybe you have a content there ready, but if people are not interested in that, in that moment, it's basically a waste of content if you just drop it. So I think they want to bring attention now to AIP. It's like, okay, we show you that we are actually active. Polyclinical gemelli, it was one of its kind. Again, this is actually quite peculiar. I don't remember if the Lockheed Martin for Apollo, so Apollo for Lockheed Martin was actually a press release or just something that popped out somewhere. But this announcement is actually very important because when we think about the defense sector, we used to think of the government side, right?
Yep.
But this is a proof that we can talk about the military side also from a commercial standpoint. In the first line of the press release, we underscore that this is not a military agreement. This is an enterprise agreement, meaning that Palantir is helping directly Babcock to operationalize their own software better. This is similar to what Palantir did with Lockheed Martin and Apollo. So this is a proof that even if these companies are actually competitors in getting the biggest deals out there in terms of defense, at the end of the day, they need Palantir because their sophistication in software is not deep enough to actually manage certain things, especially related to AI. So these huge defense contractors are focused on hardware, and hardware is very, very difficult to... software is very, very difficult to manage, to build if you have a hardware framework. Unless you are an Unreal built from this weird mix of software and hardware, similar to Apple. But for these traditional legacy companies, moving to software is actually a very steep dive.
I love Adam's comment right there. Don't worry, Adam, if you were part of the live stream yesterday when the news broke, I had to give a straight face, but there were plenty of comments that did not keep a straight face. Plenty of this.
What are you thinking about?
I was just, thinking about all the Babcocks that we'll hopefully get in the next 10 years with AIP. What do you think Karp is going to talk about for the first 30 minutes? We got 2 minutes till we go. Ladies and gentlemen, 442 people, thank you for being here. Please follow Arnie's Twitter in the description, and my Twitter in the description would mean the world to us. Arnie, what do you think Karp's going to talk about in the first 30 minutes? Last time we talked about LLMs. Do you think it's the same?
Well, actually, I would ask you how sure you are that we will see Karp talking at the beginning. Because in the press release,
I think they said he will be there. I think they definitely said he's gonna
because in the press release, it's like AIP Con will also feature Palantir CTO. No, okay, you're right.
They have him.
Alex Karp, then Shyam Sankar, CTO, and then Ted Mabray, who's the head of global commercial. I think we never hear him talking apart from a very old Bloomberg interview. So I don't expect Karp to say something really new, apart from we mentioned more than 100 companies are actually using AIP. A lot of many other companies are actually trying this. I think what Karp will try to do is creating FOMO to the potential customers that are not running a pilot yet. So often I receive the comment, I don't know if you also receive it, that, hey, Karp keeps saying the same things. It's 1 year, Karp is keep insisting on the same things. And I'll say, yes, but if you actually have a strong pitch hitting certain points that actually
say it over again.
Hit those points. Actually, the difference from the first Karp in the wild that we have seen and the Karp we are currently seeing is that right now it's like he's still Karp, but at the end of the day, his points actually follow a reasonable path that makes you understand, I need this.
It's more cohesive. It's a lot more cohesive, correct?
It's still Karp, obviously.
It's still Karp. Still batshit crazy. You get that there, but it's still Karp. I agree with you. I don't think he's going to say anything revolutionary, but I mean, marketing is tough, man. Like, people have to see an ad 15 times before they even think of the ad. So like, Karp's got to say this shit over and over and over and over at every conference until people really believe him. And obviously, meeting with head of state of Estonia, Finland, people are starting to believe him, right?
He needs to consolidate the story. The common thing of these big entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, the guy of Airbnb, it's like they have the selling points. They wake up thinking about this mission and how to transfer that mission to the world.
And how to
If they
communicate
actually changed that mission every other day, that would give an impression this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But the fact that he's always there, obviously he will try to keep improving. I think he was helped because remember that he said that he was being coached. And my speculation is that the coach not only helped Karp explaining the selling points, but also to craft the narrative. And the narrative is we are in this moment of emergency. China is not sleeping. If we don't catch up, we would be potentially at risk. So what we need to do is to implement these AI tools with also all the guardrails and so on. So spend more in software, spend more in AI, buy us.
Yeah.
That's what I see.
No, I agree. I like it. And the good thing about a message said over and over again, sometimes it gets boring. With Karp, it's never boring, right? Because he has his original style. And so if you're going to have to say the same thing over and over and over again, if you can keep saying it, like sometimes he has steak dinner analogies, then he has cockroach.com analogies. He always comes up with something.
But you see how we remember that.
Right.
I mean, if he was like the CEO of Snowflake, we would not remember anything. I don't remember anything about that guy being very strong in execution. Neither a single sentence. Okay, I'm not really interested in him, but
no, I agree. Look, this is one of the most exciting companies in the world to cover. Obviously, AI is growing in demand from the enterprise and also from consumers caring about it. So this is going to be, I think, and Arnie thinks, one of the 5 to 10 most important companies in the next decade when it comes to AI. And by the way, they beat Microsoft last year in terms of selling pure AI software. People forget about that. So it's like, AIP is branding, but they've been doing AI for a very long time. And so now they're taking it really to the next level.
Remember that EDC thing was in September. So in September, EDC released this ranking where Palantir was the best seller of AI software platforms. So no models, no general software platforms. So platforms means a group of applications that help you do stuff, create stuff, manage stuff. And Palantir was ahead. And it took like 6 months for the market to actually digest, holy shish, this company ranks first. And since now, 1 year has passed, I think apart from the community that are obsessed like us, we are here with 500 people watching this event, the general market doesn't know that.
Right. No, that's the biggest thing, and that's why these events are so important. Salesforce is having their Dreamforce conference right now, and there's like 40,000 people across the entire world that come to those conferences. So AIP is very small in comparison to the other major software companies and the conferences they pulled up. But if they do it enough times, Dreamforce has been going on for 20 years. Maybe AIP in the next 10 years is huge. Maybe there's 20,000 people that are showing up to that type of conference. Go ahead.
I was wondering, have you noticed a change every time they make a conference if the number of people attending the conference is actually increasing? Have you noticed anything?
No, I don't have the stats on that. I think it's the same Palo Alto venue, so I doubt it's increasing significantly. But the good thing is hopefully there's enough diversity of companies that are presenting to showcase the different use cases of AIP. It's 12:05. Conference supposed to start at 12, so they're probably just getting it set up and started. It'll probably start any minute now. Thank you, George, for being a member. Quick question, Arnie, since we saw Elon and Karp, do we think there's any Palantir-Tesla relationship at all that could exist?
Well, there were speculations that there was a relationship with Tesla. I think is something that was covered by Palantir Vision in a very old video. There is some hints that somehow SpaceX needs to collaborate with Palantir from the video of Meta Constellation. Obviously, they need to cooperate with also the constellation of satellites of SpaceX. So something must be there. In terms of Tesla, There was an active link, if I remember correctly, that disappeared. But we have to say that Tesla has a very strong software capability. So if they need something, they can build themselves. But there was a time, and this is a more speculative thing, but something I found online, and I remember Palantir Vision brought this up. There was a moment where Tesla was struggling a lot with Model 3, the production hell. And basically, they were so stressed, they needed to develop new tools so fast that they couldn't physically have the time to actually build something software to operationalize data, and somehow they solved it. So there is the speculation that Palantir helped there, but apart from this speculation and a remembrance of an active link, we don't know anything yet. I think we need to think of Palantir providing software to the companies that need software the most because they can't do it themselves.
Right.
Also, Elon Musk made a tweet the other day expliciting most companies can't write good software. And I commented, hey, that's actually the bull case for Palantir, exactly because most companies can't write software themselves. They can't hire the top one engineers in the world to actually build software for them, like Tesla is doing, SpaceX is doing. They can do that because they have the brand, they have the culture to actually feed this software engineering culture. But a Tyson Food, Miller's House, a Sintra, all these companies don't want to hire software engineers. And even from a software engineer standpoint, I want to join a company like that basically kills my career because it's just not cool. So if a normal employee can actually build things that normally it would require a software employee, a software engineer, that software component that Palantir provides becomes incredibly valuable. Ooh, so colored.
Agreed. All right, everybody. Arnie and I will not be interrupting. We'll see you at halftime, which is in about 90 minutes. AIP Con will be, maybe that's why they're late, because they're getting everyone seated. This is different. This looks different. It's more colorful. It's blue. It's not grayish like it was last time. AIP, the logo looks different. There's music.
The other time was very cold.
Yeah, it looks very unique.
And I think it's the first time we see so much color with Palantir.
Yeah, we haven't, and yeah, look at the AIP. The AIP literally looks like they had a new designer on that. That's different, and it's red. It's like black and red. So
seems more Apple than Palantir, actually.
What'd you say?
Seems more Apple than Palantir.
Seems more Apple than Palantir. Yeah.
We just need a rainbow, and here we are.
This is going to be interesting. We will not be interrupting the stream. We'll let it play until they take a break. Let us know in the chat where you're watching this from. Are you at work? Are you somewhere else? The ARM IPO just went live as well. While we're waiting, we'll give you an update on that. ARM is trading at $55. It's up 10%. It's up 10% for those that are in the ARM IPO. Palantir at $15.77, up 1% on the day as well. They're probably getting stuff. So we can keep talking while they're doing. Arnie, are you interested in ARM at all? Are you willing to pay an arm and a leg for ARM or no?
No, that is the kind of companies that first I realize I can't really understand. Like even if I understand the business, I realize I wouldn't have any edge.
Please welcome from Palantir, Sasha Spivak.
All right, here we go, everybody. We'll see you in 90 minutes.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to AIP Con. We were here just 3 months ago launching an entirely new product and putting it into the hands of our customers for the first time. And since then, we've been busy. But more importantly, our customers have been busy. We built our business alongside customers who need to do real work, and they need to do it fast. Our customers don't have 12 weeks to spend on proofs of concept. They don't have a year to spend ahead of that on scoping that proof of concept, and they certainly don't have 2 years ahead of that to spend with legal. on papering the proof of concept. Our customers need to go from 0 to use case inside of 5 days. And our customers want to show what they're doing, not talk about it. And so today, we're so excited to share the stage with customers who are doing just that. We have more than 180 unique organizations represented in this room alone. We have more than 40 speakers across this morning's keynotes and this afternoon's warm-ups and demo expo and masterclasses. We have customers gathering their employees at their own offices and joining us for the live stream. One customer has more than 100 employees in their Chicago office joining us. Another customer has gathered another 700 employees across their offices in Atlanta and Dallas. More than 40 organizations have onboarded to our software in the last 2 weeks alone, and another 10 in the last hour in preparation for getting hands-on keyboard this afternoon in a series of boot camps with us. That ambition is keeping us hungry, it's keeping us busy, and we're so excited to share that with you today. So with that, I'd like to introduce Alex.
Please welcome from Palantir, CEO and co-founder, Alex Karp.
We need to change the music. It's a little dental. And I'm going to drill your teeth. Yeah. And for $9.99, you can have your teeth drilled. Delayed to have you here. A lot has happened for us. When we finally had revenue in about 2008, we started to look for a place that was not a basement. And in the early days in that basement, we invited our first customer, which is a famous clandestine service in America, and we had no product, we had no people, so we all kind of gathered around, much like you try to make yourself larger in front of a bear so it doesn't eat you, to prove we had people, and that's how it began. And then when we moved over to Palo Alto, it was a big moment for Palantir, we felt we had arrived because we had built this product, PG, which really did shift the history of the world, but especially in Europe, by reducing terrorism in accordance with civil liberties. And one of the truisms of business is you're really succeeding at the place where no one believes you actually care. So we cared about data protection, civil liberties, and we went very deep on these issues. And some of those issues, not all of it, are super important for the AIP product that we're delivering. By the way, we launched the product just under 5 months ago, and now we have 150 companies using that product, 50% growth in the last month. And we're changing our go-to-market because we have no resources, away from 12-month pilots to essentially a boot camp where we all roll up our sleeves over 2 days and like, great, we'll show you it working. But both because, quite frankly, we don't have the resources, and we like to humiliate people out there saying they have products. So what better way to do it? We will show you your enterprise working in 2 days. Talk to other people. But the central reason we have had these precursor technologies, ontology, branching, an understanding of what it would mean to interact with algorithms, whether they're normal algorithms of the kind that are used on the battlefield or large language models, was a deep understanding of NLP. How do you ask and answer questions? They're different in this context, but the core issue we had in building that product was, how do you unify data sets where part of the data has to remain unknown to either machine learning or to the end user. And those products are not isomorphic. Those questions are not exactly isomorphic to how do you interact with a large language model, which is not exact in a way where you can extract value that needs to be exact under conditions where you, for legal, moral, and ethical reasons, cannot expose, and business survival reasons, your knowledge of the world to a third party's LLM. There's jarringly similar use case, and this is why we have all these people adopting the product, because quite frankly, unless you spent 20 years looking at those, you would make certain mistakes. Like the text that at the time that because intelligence operatives have to work with things they know are true and data sets that they are hoping are true. And at the time, you really couldn't interact with the text very easily. And so dealing with something that's become very, very powerful, but that's not exact, and the kind of exact algorithmic things you would need to make operational decisions to write to your enterprise. It just takes a long time to believe that that's how you have to build it, and longer to build a product. And so I associate Palo Alto with our ascendancy, and this building with our ascendancy, and our commercial business, and quite frankly, our government business in the United States, with a really cool ride. And then just a kind of obvious addendum. I was just at this gathering organized by Senator Leader Schumer, and there are many things that happen there, but it's very hard to explain how, in reality, if you even took the people who were not in the room, and then the people who, like the league below them and the league below them, you would still have a stronger tech community than any other country in the world. It's just actually kind of bonkers. Like, you have any one person on the tech side in that room has a larger tech business than probably any other country besides America. And so we're at this moment where, and we're fighting very hard to get adoption on the battlefield, some of which is happening. A lot of it's sensitive, can't really go into it, but obviously we believe not quickly enough. But one of the things that you are doing, quite frankly, without realizing it, is you're putting pressure on our government to adopt AI in a way that will improve all of our lives, with guardrails in the civil context and with guardrails in the military context, simply because you're going to adopt things, and you're going to run into senators and congresspeople and generals and colonels and sergeants and healthcare providers and people at the VA and be like, but why is my product better than yours? And this is probably the most, there are many reasons why I'm super happy about the work we're doing in U.S. commercial, and quite frankly, the just amazing. I never thought we'd get to the point where the growth was so significant. We are just trying to scrap to figure out how we can do these things. But one of the orthogonal reasons I'm very happy about this is there's no better way to cajole an organization to work faster, in this case, our clandestine and military services, than to say, okay, well, you paid $1 billion, you have a jalopy, I paid $5 million, and I'm running my whole organization. And so I'm very passionate about this for lots of reasons, but that's also one reason. And I think we have some questions, and try to keep me out of purgatory. I'm already skating a fine line. Luckily, my co-founder, I didn't appreciate the value of, we have these F shares, which basically means it's harder to fire me. But then I go to these meetings and I get away with speaking a plain English because of these F shares, but I'm realizing I'm skirting on thin ice. So maybe, yeah. So, I don't know, someone's going to ask a question.
Please welcome Senior Director of Government Services at Cisco, Mike Yonkers.
Morning. Are we going to sit down or stand up? Or
I'm standing, but
right.
you do you.
It's your show. I'm honored to be here with you today.
It's not my show. It's actually your show. And you want to stand, hop?
I do not want to hop. Thank you. I certainly don't want to dance. So
do a little.
I used to play the drums, and I used to be able to do that sort of thing, but I can't do that anymore. But I do have a question for you, and you've kind of started talking through that already this morning. I work in the government solutions part of Cisco, and I'm fascinated by this kind of government to commercial, commercial to government. I have some history previously with InQtel, and I read Sham's blogs this past weekend about Palantir government web services, and that's what's enabling what we're working for inside of Cisco. But the thing I'm fascinated by, I'm just fascinated by the company in general. The people here are unbelievable. And I've watched a lot of companies try to bring technology that was built for the government to commercial, and a lot of companies try to bring commercial technology to the government. And I've seen very few companies succeed, and it feels like you guys are succeeding in doing that. I'm curious, like, what is it that, what's the secret? Like, how are you able to do this when so many other companies fail at that?
Well, I appreciate the question. There's just to be fair, somewhat fair to us, or not to make, a lot of companies succeeded at this. It's just they haven't succeeded in the last 50 years.
Okay.
So a lot of the innovation, I believe, one of the reasons America was less divided in the past was that you had tech companies that dedicated themselves to building products for the government that then repurposed them for commercial. So then reframing the question would be like, why did that stop, and why are we able to do it? And I mean, arguably, we're even succeeding more in commercial than we are anywhere else. Well, first of all, we do attract and retain the very best people in the world. And we do that by, I mean, it sounds corny, but we are a believer culture, and that believer culture allows us to unify under a belief, which, by the way, does exclude people. Like, who, if you don't think the US government should have the best software in the world, if you're uncomfortable with the fact that we supply our software to the battlefield in the US and to allies, we respectfully ask you not to join Palantir. By the way, not in like you're an idiot. It's just, we have this belief structure. That belief structure allows us to get people. It's like one of these things where the narrowing of the selection leads to a broader ability to deal with different kinds of difficult people. You may know from your organizations, many of the most talented people in the world have one thing in common: they're very difficult. And so, and then that belief. By the way, obviously, I'm not saying we're not like it varies day to day, and God knows I've been frustrated by. I get most frustrated by the people I believe in when I feel like. But that, and then I think the secret is if you are really doing something because you believe in it, you are often solving the problem that the customer, call this clandestine services in America or the DoD or somebody. It's not the problem they want to pay you to build. It's the problem you believe they need to solve. And that's a subtle difference. And the giving them a solution, which unfortunately in our culture is often a long services program, that where the person being paid absorbs no risk, which is one of the reasons why these things often don't work at a cost that's crazy. But the customer is getting what they want. What we're doing is going to a very different level of abstraction and saying, but what is the question that they are asking that's technical? What will be the question that you should be asking tomorrow, the next day, in 1,000 days? And can we build something at that level of abstraction? The negative version that we have internally is, since we know that in the beginning we were very unpopular, it's like, how good can the product has to be good enough that even though we're the least popular people in the room, they're still going to buy it. And that's very deep in our DNA. Like our ugly duckling DNA, it's like a real thing. We believe, now we're not the ugly ducklings anymore, but don't tell us that. Certainly don't tell our people that. Like, we need to build products, ugly duckling products, meaning you're going to buy this product despite the fact you do not enjoy being in the room with us, because it will save your life. That is, and if you build products like that, and then I'll tell you on the commercial thing, I think what is really resonating, like if you talk to people here, you know, of course, we're a commercial company, you're a commercial company. There are always misalignments. We're much less misaligned with you than I believe any other company you'll ever interact with, because in the end, we want to deliver things that work because we know that that's how we survive. And then because we were so bereft of common sense, we have not played by the, like, there's a playbook on how you build these companies. And it's like, build thin technology, hire thick sales force, hire CEO that Wall Street loves. Okay. Our product, that doesn't look, that's not us. Right. So, so everybody, but that's the playbook you play. Everybody, like you go to a venture or any, that's the playbook. So everybody has this one playbook. We have another playbook, and our playbook, it's really hard to get to work. But when it does work, you end up with super loyal reference customers and partners, and they run around saying, yeah, okay, the first meeting may be weird, but you'll see. And then America is also shifted. Like we're not that outside the norm anymore, but I think that's how we did it. And for us, you know, now I'm very focused on empowering the younger people at Palantir. Yeah. I like, and getting them on the forefront, getting their comp structure and other things to work for them, rebuilding the company in, it's slightly has to be a different company in an LLM AI world. But we must build products that transform the institutions we work with, where we're fully aligned with you succeeding. But like in private, if you taped a conversation with us, what you would find is, sure, we have frustrations with X, Y, just like
Sure.
you do.
Sure.
Probably.
Yeah.
But
The world's an imperfect place.
Yeah, you're not going to find conversations where we're like, oh, what is this thin bullshit piece of product that we can get a salesperson to buy over a steak dinner that they're going to hate? It's not going to work, and it's going to boost our market cap because our CEO is really good at hanging out with analysts, and the analysts believe something they read at Harvard Business School 50 years ago that no one believes except for them. And you know, and then we don't do that. And if you want that, you go somewhere else, and there's lots of opportunity for that. And that's just not who we are. Yeah.
Well, thank you. You said this in my first conference that I was here, and you said iterate with a partner that you can trust, and we trust Palantir, and it's awesome to work with you guys. So appreciate the spirit and the answer to that question. So thank you.
Thank you.
Please welcome Chief Operating Officer at Cone Health, Mandy Eaton.
By the way, I apologize for the dental music, but
Nice.
you
Nice.
don't have to sit in the chair
Nice to see you.
unless you want to.
If I sit, will you sit, or are you going to stand?
Whatever you want.
Let's
You prefer
sit.
to sit. Could I have something to drink? Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. What?
Thank you. I have a couple questions. My first question, thank you for having this conversation. I think this is great. Our industry, healthcare, typically lags in its adoption of technology. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. I'm curious, for those of us who are trying to drive faster adoption, what recommendations do you have for us?
Palantir's doing jarringly well in healthcare, and there's a technical component, and there's a lot product market fit, to use jargon, but again, a lot of our DNA, and I'll get to, is like to survive in an unfriendly environment. Like for us in the beginning at Palantir, we had to get users first at clandestine services and then in the military. In the military, these people really know what they're doing. The people, and many are not particularly technical. And you can supply the best product in the world as a matter of theory, but if none of them are using it, first of all, it's obviously not valuable. And second of all, the product can't get better because it gets better. And this is before we were doing algorithmic things at scale, really. Product gets better by having more users. More users mean, the cliche is more users mean more data, but what it really means is more insights on top of the data that allow you to understand the parts of the data that are valuable. And now you can do that on steroids. So the most important thing for getting innovation into the hands of the people is getting innovation into the hands of the people and sitting there. I think the people running our hospital division, for example, have done an amazing job of like, you've got to engage with the frontline people. What is your actual problem here? By the way, like a culture of mutual honesty is crucial, because in all large organizations, there's always, at every level, there's alignment, but there's also misalignments.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe what the special operator wants to tell you is my biggest impediment to my work is the bonehead officer, right? But like, how do I build a product where I can do the work and then it feeds up to them, but where they're not in the way of the work? You have all these issues like, hey, my real problem is not what I'm being told by the corporate people, and I'm going to block adoption unless you solve the problem I care about. And then, but if you identify that problem, you can also go to the people in charge and say, okay, we will get them to adopt this product. We need to build feature sets that get them to use it. And then because they're using the product, you can also guide the people. And when I say guide, I mostly don't mean control. Like what the more successful products do is they provide a range. So we did this early on with financial decisions. Like if you're working in a healthcare context, what will get broad adoption is if you, like my dad's a doctor. If I tell my dad, hey dad, I know how to build a business, he'd be like, well, I read a book. I'll tell you how to do it or something, right? So doctors are doctors. And, but if you provide a range of like, okay, well, this is where we think the decision should go, and you get to iterate, you're empowering the end user. And that range guidance also gives the people who are managing the P&L of the business a lot of ability to control the kind of costs and risks that they're managing. And so and there's architectural ways in which our product is built for that, again, because that's how we learn to survive. And also because we don't believe we can survive if you're not using our product. But you have to empower the people on the front end in a way where they want to use it, in a way where they still get to make decisions, because there's just some things they're never, like a doctor looks at a patient and has a feeling, is this patient healthy or not? And if you're going to tell the doctor that they can't have that, they're not going to use their product. Same thing for nurses. And so, but you can say, okay, we have capacity issues. And if you make these kind of selections, you will no longer have the capacity issues. And by the way, the frustrating part of you having to tell people no all day, and that's how you get adoption. And then you build on top of that, and you get a very strong product.
That's great. So people are really at the heart of this, and I think that leads me to my second question: is when we think about AI and similar technology, should we be thinking about that as job replacers, job changers, or just efficiency drivers? Should AI and other solutions like this be helping us to keep pace with how fast our information uptake has become, or can we do less or simplify things?
I don't think there's one unified answer to this. I think in the healthcare industry, you're very constrained by the number of people you could hire anyway. The primary focus will be making people who are already doing a good to very good job much more efficient. So increasing the productivity of the workers, and then there are lots of reasons why. So, it's like you probably you will get a lot more value out of the individual workforce you have. And that there'll be less replacement than people think, but that's also because the delta between what you're being asked to do and what you can do is so large. So you're dealing with thin margins, heavy regulatory environment, and increased demand. So even as we increase your efficiency, it's still going to be a long time before that's truly efficient. I think in broader society, what you will find is people who are at the nexus of either high training and regulatory contexts, it will augment. I do think if you're not trained, you will have to be retrained, because the current use of the LLM that's most efficacious is augmenting. It's still augmenting more than people want to acknowledge. Especially if there's any actual output that matters. So it's like moving from poetry to decision requires you're augmenting the ability of a trained, thoughtful individual more than you are replacing them in the near term. But again, I think this is where you'll see a otherwise constrained environments in the U.S. commercial outperforming other Western societies because they have the same issues, but they're rejecting the implementation of these technologies either directly or indirectly by making it, most of the great providers are in the US, and that's hard for some places to accept.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Please welcome from Panasonic Energy, Alex Majewski.
Morning, Dr. Karp.
Sit, stand.
Sit's good.
Okay.
So I want to ask you more of a philosophical question this morning. So with all of the gloom and doom that's in the media these days around AI, especially in the context of arts and culture, what are some of the positive transformations that you think AI is driving humanity towards that most people aren't thinking about?
Well, I mean, there are some dangers. So, there are two camps here in broadly speaking, those that say it's all good and those that say it's all bad. And I think it's kind of pretty good and very good. And then unless it goes all wrong, and then there's a
very bad
civilization risk.
Yep.
But first of all, just, this is probably not the right way to answer the question. I always am, my mom's an artist. I grew up around artists. I kind of personally reject, like most people view artists as being painters, photographers, writers. I honestly view building a business as an art form. So, I do think that if you change artists to, I want to do a creative endeavor, creative is defined by, I'm going to build something that is not the way I would be taught in school to build it. However, deals with the underlying issues of your art. So like you do need to know how to be trained how to paint in order to be a great artist, but then the great painters and writers are have extended their art. So if you read, in philosophy, I could give you a long list, but you can tell every single sentence is from this person. And if you change it to the basis of almost everything that we enjoy in this world, certainly in this country, was in the beginning some form of art, like the business that you're building, the way in which you're adapting, the people who create the most value, and then you also assume the people who do this are kind of often outside the norm, meaning they don't fit exactly into the current structures. Part of the reason they do the art. I tend to see the LLM movement as enormously emancipatory. And I also think that, the thing that's interesting about large language models is they're, like many artists, they are absolutely unique in their capabilities. And then they also can't really go buy a pack of cigarettes or get a coffee off the ground. Like they don't add well, they hallucinate. Yeah. I think if you approached large language models as they themselves are great artists, as opposed to they're great scientists, you'd have a much better, accurate understanding. And therefore, I think they partner very, very well with creative people who also are very uneven, of which I would definitely include myself. That's not obvious. But it is obvious to everyone who works at Palantir, believe me. They're like, why is Karp bumping his head, turning the wrong left again, telling us to launch this product? And I think what you will find in a culture, again, okay, so we hire a lot of people from France, interestingly, because France has essentially one school that if you go there, you get to rule France, and if you don't, you don't. And so, like, you can just see structurally in a country where everyone gets to go to bat, basically, because we don't have one school. I don't know where you went to school. I don't care. No one cares. Like, it's not even relevant. Like, it's like, doesn't matter. I don't know what your parents did. No one cares. Literally, no one cares. It's all this stuff we have to talk about. No one cares. People care about your performance and are you doing something interesting? And that's basically it. And AI will hypercharge people who are who are doing something unique and interesting, whether it's inside an organization, meaning in a business that exists, building new organizations, transforming. I mean, one of the things I admire about what you guys are doing is you're bringing a hybrid culture of Japanese production to America. Okay, that's much, much easier. I would say probably not possible without software and AI. But then what's going to make it particularly interesting is it is a hybrid culture. You're bringing certain things that Americans are very pragmatic, creative attitude, but built on top of a way of doing things that is, for what you're doing, arguably the best in the world. That is a AI creation in action. You know, it really does mean that the value you're creating is pretty much non-attenuated from you in a way that it was in the past. And it's particularly good if you're sitting in this country, which is why, we see it at Palantir, people flooding into Palantir from all over the world because you can just work in your own context. So I think in the near term for many people that I find inspiring and disproportionately in America, this is going to be a freeing technology. And especially for people with artistic proclivities. And so this is one of the reasons why, even personally, I wanted to embrace this earlier than others. And I think it's going to really make people, with guardrails, obviously, happier and wealthier.
So following up a little bit on what you said around, the Japanese and the American culture and bringing us together, the world seems farther apart than ever in my lifetime. So do you see AI and things like LLM really bringing us back together?
You mean the world, America, inside America, or
the world in total?
Okay,
it seems like there's so many fractions.
Okay. I'm going to leave the American. We are divided, which is an issue, but then maybe we get a lot of growth and suddenly we're less divided. But I don't think on the international stage it's going to get better. It's going to get much worse. And then that's a separate discussion for. I mean, I'm spending a lot of my time meeting with people in DC and cajoling, begging, pleading. There's some 0.2% of the DoD budget, 0.2%. No, I'm not making that up. 0.2% is being spent on what they're calling AI. And then software really depends on who builds it. It's not, you need money and you need the right people and you need the right partners. And it's all three components. And of course, America, without going into details, is pretty far ahead on certain elements, but our main adversaries are aware of this. And in my view, and again, no one has to agree with me in this room, but I think you get world peace by US being clearly the strongest nation in the world, because you could argue about our pluses and minuses and faults. I think we spent a lot of time talking about that, but I'm not aware of any other country that is benevolent with great power as the US. And those of you in this room and others who disagree with it, okay, so I could just narrow it. Our adversaries will be very different than we would be if they had military superiority in AI. So that's a separate issue, but I think that's how you get a more unified world. But that's not going to, it's going to be, if I had to predict, it's going to be pretty rough. But in any case, thank you for these questions.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Please welcome Telco Managing Partner at DXC, John Boehm.
Dr. Herb, how's it going?
Very firm handshake.
Yeah. Oh, my no notes. Perfect. So I've been in and around quite a bit of launching of commercial on Foundry, handful of different organizations. First time I saw it about 6-7 years ago. One of the big things leadership from Palantir is always saying is this technology is at least 5 years ahead of our next nearest competitors. you still feel like you've got that kind of a gap in between where you are today and other competitors in enterprise SaaS analytics space?
It depends. You know, we have a number of products. Certain aspects of our product, the 5 years ahead is also a euphemism for no one really understands why this works,
right?
And they haven't started building. Now, I would say in the AI context, the context of time has shifted. So, like, people are doing what you would take 10 years in like 2 years or a year. Certain products that aren't relevant for this audience, like PG, Gaia, Nexus Peering, Apollo, might be like there's just no one else going to build them. Then you have Foundry. I don't think anyone's going to build Foundry for lots of reasons. It's expensive, hard to build. It only looks really valuable now. So like because it was valuable before, but somehow it wasn't in the zeitgeist that how valuable it could be. Foundry until AI was like, it was kind of like a, God bless all of you who adopted it. And I believe it is the best product on the market, but it basically was like we will make your enterprise work better, but you're not going to have any fun. And so and now it's like, we will get your enterprise sizzling because if you have it, you can adopt AI in an ethical way and change your business. So now it's kind of, for lack of a better word, it's sexy. So there may actually be people who build components of Foundry, and you know, I cannot believe that people are not focused on building like branching, ontology, logic. Everyone's going to need, but you know, one of the things about being kind of, you know, like from the outside, we're not following a playbook. So people are like, well, but where's the playbook aspect of ontology, branching? Where does that fit into my 5, 6, whatever? In each one of these cases, we're de facto very far ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I think the 5-year thing you have to compress that because AI, large language models, and copilots, other things will allow you to work quicker, and people see the roadmap. And quite frankly, if you're looking at PG, you know, we have, I don't know, a large percent of the addressable market, but no one cares because the market is very small.
Right.
Whereas here, the market is infinite. It's the only market that matters. I'm still somewhat optimistic because we owe a lot to the venture community. I think the venture community is going to have a very hard time in that they want a model where all the money is in building new LLMs. And I believe all the value is in managing the LLM in a safe, effective way and writing logic to it. And that's a subtle difference. If we are right, you want to be a company that's off the ground and has something like we have, existing client base, a reputation, something like Foundry, an ability to implement ontology, understanding of tooling, even the understanding of you would need tools. It sounds very simple.
Right.
And obviously LLM needs tools, but even that is like somehow outside the financing bailiwick of most venture people. And then you have large companies. And these companies are the best in the world at what they do, but with notable exceptions, in my business, the software business, they're just not that many software engineers. And then it's like, so their model is to acquire companies. Well, and there are not that many companies to acquire. So I'm pretty optimistic about this, but on the inside, on the other hand, internally, we are running very quickly. You know, we don't want to make the mistake of being ahead and then losing.
Right. So you were saying about the compression of the time frame. So I think that one of the things right now, LLMs are going and accessing human source material. Humans have created that first level of material. And so you can take that 10 years of understanding down to 1 because all the source material is human generated. How do we prevent, as we layer more AI generated content on top of, you know, out in even in the ecosystem of the internet, how do we keep these AI models from getting dumber by then consuming their own output and then using that in the next training set?
Well, that's a super interesting question. I would say most people are worried about them getting smarter and then making us irrelevant. And I hope we have the dual challenge of that they get dumber and dumber. And then, of course, the way to solve that problem is you need Foundry, you need logic, you need an ontology. But so that would be the answer. There's a real chance that you're right that they get dumber and dumber, but yeah, and again, I think you should maybe explain that problem to the venture community. That's my critique. That's what they're selling. And you'd be surprised. We should not be running around telling people, look, your thing is going to fail. I do it anyway, but partly because no one listens, and it's like, but that is a legitimate and profound critique of what most of the businesses that are being financed here are going to do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I may be. Is this the time to throw me off the stage? Oh, there's. Oh, yeah. I know. We can't. Okay. Yeah.
Please welcome from Cleveland Clinic,
I can't.
Adrian Miu.
Yeah. Well, huge honor.
Hi. Thanks for having me. My question has to do with your position in AI and what sort of influence you see for patient care and hospital operations.
Well, first of all, it's a great honor. I think you were our first partner in your space.
Yeah.
And
I just want to give a shout out to Jeremy, Drew, and Pargo. They're great. Yeah.
They are. And their team below them I was in New York over the weekend and some weird hour, and they're all there. So they're a very special crew. Look, in your space, you have governance issues, you have ethical issues, you have privacy issues. Everybody wants effective care. Nobody wants their personal patient data exposed to anyone. You have very technical users. Technical users will not use a product that tells them that they're not engaged with. So they need to be brought along. They need to, quite frankly, you have legal liability issues. So how do you protect healthcare providers from being randomly sued? And anyone who's got a relative or is involved in healthcare has a somewhat cynical view of how that happens, or a realistic view. And then the stakes couldn't be higher. And so the way you implement is you show the end user that this is reliable, it is augmenting their work, it's making their work safer and more effective, and you get them, because only they can tell their peers that this is working, to tell their peers this works. And then it's obviously very helpful when you have, a mission-driven organization like yours, where people, up and down the chain are really engaged in this. And then I do think in your industry, as I mentioned before, you guys are under a lot of pressure because of high regulation, litigious context, and margins that are pressed. And there is no answer for that besides implementing software. It's just that, because you can't change the other variables. And we could debate, if we could change the other variables, that would also be an option. And quite frankly, if I were in charge of that, I would be very open to discussions. But in reality, those are the constraints for now and probably for a long time. And then you have to get proverbially a lot more from less. And that is what Foundry does. That's what AIP does. And that's why our partnerships in this area have gone very well.
Yeah, it has. Can I just add to that? Sort of my philosophy with what I do is to try to be disruptive. Think outside the box. Basically, whatever I see what's being currently done, I want to do the opposite. And so I'm trying to leverage you guys and AI and the technologies. In your position, what would you say is the next step towards operations, how to leverage that AI technology in the hospital industry?
Well, I mean, it's obvious in some ways, like identifying people's risk proclivities, having an updated understanding of the literature and the treatment profiles, being able to give the end user the absolute most accurate current understanding of patient treatment data. we're probably not very far from more individualized or already individualized AI and broadly defined possible without AI and broadly defined. And I would say, and a governance structure that protects everyone involved.
Yeah.
Because, you can't do individualized medicine without making an individualized assessment, and that without the right governance structure puts the healthcare provider in a misaligned relationship with the person they're trying to treat. And there's a banality of healthcare, but it's like you have to have full alignment between patient and doctor. But then you're doing this in a data-rich, regulated environment. It's a very hard use case.
Yeah.
So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And welcome to our humble abode. And I hope you learn a lot. We will learn a lot from you. And thanks for coming.
Please welcome from Palantir, Chief Technology Officer, Shyam Sankar.
Is in Violet too.
Good morning.
Let's go.
All right. So June of this year, from this stage, I launched AIP. So just, 3-4 months ago here, which AIP is our open, extensible AI platform to help you build AI-enabled applications by bringing LLMs to your private data on your private networks that power these experiences both safely but also efficaciously. But really, the observation that we've had over this period of time is that the battleground of AI, it's the factory floor, it's the front line. And that's because AI transformation is an empirical journey. You have to experience it. You can't think your way through it. You have to go do it. And so today we have tons of product to show, but we're going to have our customers actually show all of the new things that we've done together. We're going to have them take you on their experiential journeys here. Customers like HCA, who have proactively looked into the future of their actual schedules to identify patient bottlenecks and staffing shortages and solve them upstream. Or Eaton, where they've gone from an alert inbox that tells them things that are going wrong to a solution inbox that tells them things that they can be doing about things that have not yet gone wrong but might. The important thing about all of these customers is that they have pushed to prod. I tell every Palantirian internally, I don't want to see proofs of concepts. I want to see proof. And that's largely because these LLMs are different. They are something new. They break our existing mental models. And I thought that's what I'd really focus on sharing with you. What are the ways in which we think about these things and how are they kind of different than what's come before? And we could start there by asking, what is an LLM doing? Or perhaps more importantly, what is it not doing? Well, it's not doing algorithmic reasoning, which is a form of computation that's so precise that there's no ambiguity in its execution, right? To the extent it doesn't do what you said, that we call that a bug. That's not supposed to happen. And on the other extreme, it's not doing human thought, a inherently creative medium that is wrought with ambiguity. That's part of the feature of human thought. It occupies this middle ground in between these two things here. And it can be very tricky as you're implementing these things to hold that tension in a precise way, because it is fluent in natural language, but it doesn't actually understand what it's saying. So it's not human thought. And while it is instructable in ordinary human prose, it's horrible at algorithmic reasoning. So it's this third type of thing. And I think one of the characteristics of this third type of thing is that LLMs are statistics, not calculus. It is this kind of stochastic genie, if you will. There's a lot of randomness in it. The best metaphor for this, and perhaps one of the things to think about as you're implementing these use cases, is what it was like for us when we first started trying to predict the weather. When we first started trying to predict the weather, I think in the rough mid-1800s, we thought it was going to be like predicting the next eclipse. Once we figure out the math behind this thing, I'm going to tell you precisely what the weather is going to be in this location 100 years from now at this time. And obviously, intuitively, we all understand that's not how weather works, right? Astronomy is calculus. It's governed by the truth of the underlying mathematical equation. I can tell you that in the year 2186, I can tell you exactly where you need to be on Earth to see the longest eclipse in the last 10,000 years. That's the nature of calculus. On the other hand, with weather, it's more like it might rain today. right? The equations are dominated by the propagation of error and some underlying fundamental stochasticity, randomness in it. And we see this through another lens too, like the fixation with pushing to prod comes by thinking about this by analogy. When you introduce even one stochastic variable into what was otherwise a deterministic system, your software, you've now made the entire system stochastic. And that requires us to rethink some fundamental things that are in the tool chain, how we as human reason about the problem, and how we incorporate it to achieve outcomes. This is the difference between a demo and a product, right? So we had a self-driving car demo in 2025. It drew 132 miles. Like it's not around the block. It's a meaningful distance here. And arguably you could say maybe this year we'll have a product, maybe it'll take another year or two more. That's after 44 million self-driving miles. And some of that, the need to have all that experience speaks to this intuition that we have, that there's something stochastic about it. We need a lot of proof to understand how it's going to behave. So, you know, in some sense, it's kind of easy to build a demo. It's much harder to build the product, and that's what we're focused on. And when you really think about that, you start to uncover the fundamental primitives and infrastructure that you're going to need to harness the true underlying value of transformation that LLMs can bring to you here, and realizing that all of that value comes from the elegant integration of the algorithmic reasoning, the LLM, and human thought. And that's what you're going to see in the workflows that customers show off later today. But one of the core ways to leverage the power, the underlying power of the LLM, is this idea of the K-LLM kernel. Why would you use one LLM when you can use K? We can kind of think about, you know, if you squint and just go with this analogy for a second, like each of these LLMs is like a slightly deranged mad scientist, mad genius. You know, when we have this sort of situation as humans, we build committees. Why would you ask one mad genius the question when you can ask a committee of mad geniuses the question, and then synthesize the answer that you're going to get back and understand the kind of rich context where they agree, where they disagree, and what you want to do about that. It also forces you to realize the fundamental truth here that there isn't an answer in a context like this. There are answers. And it's probably most important for the underlying application developers to realize that. Because if you're in this simple paradigm, pretending that this is deterministic, asking a question, getting back a single answer, that could be hallucination, that could be kind of, it's not the answer, it's an answer. And then you're surfacing that to the user, you're going to find yourself stuck somewhere in that journey between 2005 and 2023. If instead you're using a kernel like the KLM kernel, and you're getting back multiple answers, you're synthesizing those answers, you're able to flow that through and drive the entire user experience towards operational outcomes. It's how you synthesize, analyze, and design the software that's really going to matter here. So if we just walk through this approach briefly so that we understand what we're looking at, you would take your prompt and you would feed it to K LLMs. In this case, I just have 4 to keep it simple and reason through it. You get back the responses from each of these LLMs. You can use that to summarize the response of each LLM, and you send the entirety of each of the responses to a synthesis stage to understand, rate, compare the answers that you've gotten, and come forth with a best possible answer, the dissenting view of the answers, which models got what right, which models got what wrong, and then surface that to both the developer to drive the user experience and the end user as a consequence of doing that. Now, the synthesis can be deterministic. If you're getting back JSON or code, you could treat these as abstract syntax trees. You can do formal diffs of what you're getting back. It's a deterministic sense of what's the same and different. But also, the synthesis can be an LLM step itself, where you have a synthesis prompt that's helping you, in the context of the workflow you're trying to do, create the right synthesis that matters for the work that you're doing in that stage. I'm going to illustrate this in a second. But I think what you will see is that the KLLM approach is the only way to manage model stability, operational risk, and harness the true nature of the LLM to win. So when we talk about model stability, if you remember a few months ago, there were reports that ChatGPT or GPT-4 suddenly got worse or better or different at certain things. And if you asked OpenAI, they would say, no, nothing changed. I always told you these models were stochastic. So yeah, you're getting different answers. That's the nature of the model. I think that's a pretty strong argument for why you can't have one LLM making critical decisions. You need K. On the other hand, if you think, oh, actually something did change in the underlying model, I think this is a pretty strong argument for why you need more than one LLM. You need K if you're making a critical decision. So this allows you to triangulate the answers you're getting back and have a scaffolding around the critical decisions you're trying to drive in your enterprise operationally. Then if we think about, there's a lot of interest in creating custom fine-tuned models. That's great. I think we're going to live in a world where there's a menagerie of models in the future. How are you going to deploy them? You know, you think about how are you going to have to do the equivalent of 44 million self-driving miles of testing and evaluation to understand and characterize putting this model into something as critical as manufacturing batteries or critical national infrastructure? I don't think that's a viable surface area of solution. Why don't you just make it the K+1 model? It's the K+1 LLM that's being evaluated in parallel. You're able to triangulate how it's the same or different in how it performs against a broad surface area, and certainly contextually against the use cases you actually built this custom fine-tuned model to perform against. So it's the fastest way to and also the safest way to get operational value from the models that you want to build in the menagerie here. And then, of course, a big part of this approach is recognizing that you don't have many priors, or you have no priors on these models. How much experience do you have with this committee of experts? Over time, just like with a human committee of experts, as you get to know the experts better, you will have a stronger opinion, in this case backed up by the telemetry within AIP of historical responses, of which models are going to be best at what sort of use case. So are you going to ask every question to K models all the time? No. You know, as you have stronger and stronger conviction of where to go for what, you'll tune that down. You can tune it down for cost, you can tune it down for correctness and accuracy, but all those levers will be within control of the enterprise here. So maybe to walk through an example here, the first, so this shows us using GPT-4, StarChat Beta, and Llama 2 13B. What models don't really matter per se, but just so you have some context here. So the underlying prompt is that I would like to get back a Python function that takes in this table of employees with columns like first name, last name, year, employment date, and company. And it gives me back the employee at each company with the highest tenure. So the prompt is being sent off to all three models at once. You see the GPT-4 answer streaming back in. And once you get the full answer, you'll get a summary of the answer. So it collapses down. You see the StarChat summary, and Llama will be coming shortly. Once all of these answers come, they will be sent to the synthesis stage, then to compare and contrast them. And that's where the real magic of the KLLM kernel comes in. So here is the synthesis answer streaming back in here. And I'm getting the model's assessment of what code should I actually consider? What Python code should I actually do that meets these requirements here? But much more interestingly, now we see the relative performance of the models. So how did Llama 13 do? How did StarChat do? And we see that in the kind of upper right and kind of in the middle, in the lower middle section here. So let's step through each of these in a second. Here are the summary answers. Now, here's the output from the synthesis, where what we can see is that, interestingly, Llama did something where it dropped all employees who had a tenure of less than a year. That was not an explicit requirement of the prompt. It's kind of interesting, though, as a developer, maybe I want to consider that. It also shows you the nature of the stochasticity that's underlying this. So it either meets my requirements, it considers an edge case I hadn't thought of, or it doesn't. StarChat actually failed to account for ranking the tenure of the employees. And so this gives me a sense, again, of this is another dot in understanding how this model is going to perform over the fullness of time here. But I, as the developer or the end user here, have a rich understanding of what I should be thinking about, and a much richer understanding than if I just asked one of these models the question. Even if I got, quote unquote, the right answer, I have a much more varied topology, a 3D understanding of what's going on. And then operationally, one of the interesting things is, well, what if I only have one LLM? Even then, this is still valuable. Think about it as K by 1 LLMs, where we've put this in production with manufacturing customers, where they're trying to leverage their internal enterprise knowledge repositories and create abilities for frontline workers to interact with it. You can actually take your question and send it to, in parallel, the same LLM at scale, and understand how much concurrence is there in the responses that you're getting back, how much divergence is there. I have a silly example here where I'm just saying, look, basically I have 3 doors, which one should I pick? And in this is a real example where I get back a different answer every time I ask. You could kind of maybe expect that in the context of having the stochastic genie as your answer. One thing it tells you is this is probably not a good question to ask an LLM. This is an LLM hard problem. If you're never going to get convergence on the answers you're asking, maybe you're kind of designing this wrong. It's some way of thinking about that. But importantly, then this surfaces, how do I bring this to the workflow? Do I need more knowledge augmentation on the front end? What sort of algorithmic tools can I bring to bear? How do I bring this into production? And this has been very valuable, where it deeply cuts down hallucinations and the reliability of the underlying use cases. A lot of the work I just showed here focuses on chat, but if any of you had the unfortunate experience of having me sit at you and talk about these LLMs for a bit, is you know one thing is I'm highly biased against chat. I think it is the most limiting interface, and it kind of structurally means that we're not going to fully harness the value of LLMs because it curtails our human creativity on what these things can do. The reason that's the case, it feeds this number one mistake about thinking about, what are you relying on the parametric knowledge of the model to do? The parametric knowledge is like the knowledge that's implicit in the model. What I think is special about these models is that they speak a language, a regular grammar. Yeah, sure, English, but much more interestingly, they speak domain-specific languages. They speak code. They speak JSON. If I could just say it colloquially, they speak code in clicks, and they do that really, really well. On the other hand, if you're trying to somehow jam the specific knowledge of your domain into these models, I think you will find that that's a Sisyphean task. You will find that you never fully get there. They never get better than your true experts, or you're always chasing your tail. And it's not like a database where you can just jam facts in there. So it's kind of going back to this calculus statistics thing, that it's like the pressure in the balloon is kind of moving around. You're going to be facing trade-offs on the frontier. But here, they are phenomenal. So if you thought about this as LLM should be defining the experience your humans have when they're using their enterprise tools, then you start to see different patterns emerge here. So this video will illustrate, we have this application in the upper right-hand corner here. That is our operational application. That application has some sort of internal representation, some sort of JSON that represents the app, and that's what you're going to see kind of rendered here. Okay, so looks like computer speak. Well, I would like to add properties to this table that are every location property that's in the ontology. Now, I can do that as a human. It's probably on the order of 50 to 100 clicks to go into the application, to edit it, to add all of these things. Or I can just say this, and actually the LLM can speak those clicks, if you will, and change my underlying application state for me. This is, I think, a better way of thinking about the paradigms that we could be using to power these sorts of experiences. It's a concrete manifestation of how the experience the LLM creates changes the human interaction with software and allows us to leverage tools. So LLMs need software tools. They need that augmentation to do algorithmic reasoning. That is how you get the precision of calculus with the power of statistics. And all of the value sits at that intersection of your deterministic code and the stochastic LLM. This is how you register your existing AI models, your Jupyter notebooks, your Lambda functions, your high-performance compute clusters. How do I take all of that deterministic value I have and unleash it in this sort of paradigm here? And I think in many ways, chat also limits us to thinking about LLMs as a single tool. It's like in music, it's like hitting one note, right? Like you want to be playing a chord, and that chord is the elegant integration of human thought, algorithmic reasoning, these tools that you have, and the LLMs. And so I want to just signpost this to really watch for this in the customer demonstrations later. And here's an example that we'll see from Eaton, where we can look at what do these tools mean? What do they look like? So we start off and we see the prompt here. This is, of course, a prompt that's going to an LLM. But underneath the prompt, you can see it's been given a tool, the ability to query the ontology for plant material, I think. You see more prompts, and then the interplay, okay, well, I can query for plants and for plant material as well. And as we kind of go on here, and this is like chained logic. This is an LLM-backed function. You know, I'm building logic that's running my enterprise. It's fluidly going between the LLM and a query tool. And now what we see, it's also going to an ontology function. You can, that's the function that's calling the AI model. It's calling the Lambda function. It's calling the notebook. It's calling the logic in my enterprise. And it's letting the LLM wield it in an operational context here with the guardrails, with the safety in an elegant sort of way. So I think you'll see that in each of these demonstrations. How did the customers build these functions? And how are they going between the LLMs and the algorithmic tooling? And that's a big part of this. What will also come through in these demonstrations, the LLMs don't change what problems matter to your business. The problems that matter to your business are the same problems that mattered to your business yesterday. They allow you to solve these problems substantially more quickly. And I think that's really exciting, because with AI, as Alex even kind of alluded to, all the value really accretes to the incumbent users, the incumbent applications, the incumbent organizations. And that means you can just solve these things substantially more quickly. Okay, so I think enough with our mental models. Let's get to the front lines. Ted will be up next to tell us and take us there. Like, what works? How do you approach it? How do you get started? Thank you, guys.
Please welcome from Palantir, Head of Global Commercial, Ted Mabry.
Hi, everybody. Ted Mabry. I lead Palantir's global commercial business, and I have the distinct privilege to give you a whirlwind tour through examples of AIP in action. And I think this will probably be the easiest talk I've ever had to give, because the progress is awesome. It is super exciting. It has been really exhilarating to work with you all over the last several months. I want to start by giving sort of a nod of thanks to the creativity that you all have brought to this process. You've really approached the problems with sort of the structural optimism of a civil engineer. I can build a software skyscraper, but I can do that with the rigor of the foundations have to really work. And some of you have already pushed to prod. You're already generating those unique context-driven feedback loops to get smarter and smarter over time. Some of you are just taking those first steps beyond chat, as Shyam alluded to. But all of you have broken ground. And we're really thankful for that and really appreciate the trust that you've put in us to go on this journey together. So with that, let's get into it. Obviously, a lot of our journey in applying AI in high-stakes contexts has come from our experience in defense. This weekend, General Milley took CBS News through a tour of how they are supporting operations in Ukraine. You might see some familiar software in the background there. And as I was watching it, there are a couple of things that I took away from it that I thought were important, that were just resonant across all of the commercial use cases that we've learned from those defense partners. The first is that they have always had extreme demands between the synthesis of what is happening in the real physical world and what's represented with the digital tools that they use to interact with that world. And critically, at the front lines, that means understanding exactly what's happening now. But not only what's happening from a passive static map, but how can I synthesize what is most relevant? What can I alert on? What are the major movements? How can I do that in a way that allows me to collaborate across multidisciplinary functions that are managing that theater? And then also, just as importantly, working backwards from those operators. These operators need things to understand the pulsing live view of what is happening on the battlefield today. And things like semantic search back in the rear, they might be a nice efficiency, probably valuable to understand things. But if you really want to apply them, you have to get to the front lines, as you all have. So getting into the commercial use cases, there are so many things that share that same foundation. And a lot of you all have started with just how can I push the efficient frontier of what the software can provide me to understand the operating theater that I operate in. At HCA Healthcare, as you'll see shortly, that's around how can I enable a caregiver to coordinate complex care routines across multiple providers, across thousands of patients, and invert the relationship between software as a place to do data entry versus something that is giving me operating leverage to provide better care. For American Tire distributors, the operating theater is a supply chain. How can I understand what is happening across the supply chain? What are the most relevant and important deviations? How do I allocate scarce resources to have the most optimal and efficient interventions? For the New York Stock Exchange, that theater is the markets. How can I help an issuer understand across their structured data, unstructured data, build cohorts and understand exactly what is happening to a security on a given day? This one's probably a bad one for us to have chosen to dog food, because if anybody can tell us what's happening to PLTR on any given day, that's a tall task for an LLM. At United Airlines, that's in the context of a network operations center across all of the entirety of the complexity of what's happening with my aircraft, what's happening with crews, ground delay programs, flights, weather, swaps, etc. And for us at Palantir, that's the entirety of our Apollo deployed fleet across all of the heterogeneous environments that we deploy our software in, and using AIP to provide our own operating leverage to get more efficient. But of course, you guys don't just understand the world. It isn't just a, can I get data to my fingertips? I need to wield the world. I impact it. I make the world happen. And so those defense partners aren't just saying what is happening. They're saying, can I generate courses of action to understand, given that operating context and given everything that I've done to prepare for this, what is the optimal thing that I might want to do? What are suggestions? How do I provide solutions in the hands of the operator? Similarly, in the healthcare context, at an HCA or a Tampa General or the Cleveland Clinic, they're using AIP to peer into the future to understand, where am I going to run into a bottleneck in my care? How can I proactively suggest and automate changes in scheduling so that I can prevent those conflicts from happening while I still have the ability to address them? At CPKC, another one that you're going to see later, it's how can I provide a dynamic interface for routers to interact with a highly dimensional, highly complex optimization model to move optimization out of the planning domain and into the operating domain and avoid costly train dwell time. At Avis, you're using it right now to say, how can I take live dynamic vehicle valuations, part availability, the context of operators on the ground to prepare for Hurricane Lee and figure out, am I going to sell cars? Am I going to repair them? Under what cases, what strategy optimal? At Surf Air, that's managing flight contingencies. When something gets disrupted, an email, a pilot isn't available, how do I route and manage the complexity of that so I can get my passengers on those planes? We're also seeing enormous uptake sort of in the supply chain context generally. So at Molson Coors, they built an initial application to take into account structured and unstructured signals of deviation and disruption in their supply chain, synthesize the current state of the supply chain, and generate suggestions on potential remediation actions. At Fujitsu in Japan, their developers have built a general purpose application to provide supply chain disruption services to all of their customers. And we're seeing this same dynamic play out across industries as far-ranging as steel, medical supplies, and protein. We're also seeing sort of in that general supply chain context, how can I use AI to procure more efficiently? And one of the common patterns here has been, I have a complex product catalog. One, can I just cohere that? Oftentimes through acquisition across different ERPs, how can I get a sense of what is happening with my products? What are the contracts that are associated with them? Where's their potential efficiencies? But then beyond that, it's also saying, well, okay, what are the likely raw materials that are in these products? How are those raw materials linked to the volatility of index prices or commodity index prices so relevant in this period of major inflation? And then given all that, how can I generate proactive negotiation strategies in order to procure more efficiently? Seeing this in spades in the food service industry with Aramark, who has an infinitely complex SKU catalog and needs to operate with this level of efficiency. And then this general pattern of take unstructured documentation that exists buried away in contracts, extract it, link it into the operating context so that we can operate more efficiently. We're seeing it happen at Nepesco or at Synetics or internally at Palantir so that we can make sure that we are managing and optimizing our own internal operations very efficiently. One of the sort of consistent themes across all of these different use cases is how much more complexity can I manage? And one of the things we're super excited about is another emerging pattern is sort of taking the concept of continuous integration, continuous delivery, which is sort of native to anyone building a big and complex software system, and say, well, can we extend that into the physical world? Can I have continuous integration when, if you take Lilium building their eVTOLs, I have reams and reams of requirements and unstructured information for what that eVTOL is going to be. I have all of the assembly and parts that are assembled in order to match and meet those requirements. But they're innovating all the time. Those things are changing constantly. And so managing that overhead of how do I manage that continuous integration of what's going on with the aircraft to provide more operating leverage to innovate faster and get their product to market. And the same sort of pattern we're seeing in other major infrastructure projects, whether it's in constructing major rail systems, giant plants, or even in the digital domain, where it's just focusing on things like master data management, especially in the context of, can I do material harmonization at scale, especially for very acquisitive customers or customers who are going through sort of what used to be the endless risk process of, can I consolidate an ERP? Can I sunset an ERP? Can that prevent me from generating the synthesis that I want or extracting the returns from M&A? Other of you have focused on instead, how can I generate more revenue with this technology? If it's going to really matter, prove it. And the easiest way to prove it is generate dollars for the bottom line. One of the really interesting patterns with this is, of course, all of those, how do you really generate more dollars? Well, you provide a better service to your customer. Right? So it isn't just about generating more efficiency, it's improving the quality and sophistication of the product. So at Sampo, in commercial underwriting, they have the challenge of, how can I triage which submissions I'm going to process? How can I accelerate the rate at which I triage those submissions and process that reams of unstructured information into the way that I understand the world? I then need to link that with the unstructured underwriting guidelines that I'm constantly iterating on to decide what are the risks that I want to take on in the portfolio. And of course, I want to do that in the context of what my portfolio actually is and what are the things that have been generated there, like accumulation risk. And we see this as sort of a ubiquitous problem in the commercial underwriting space. Many of our other insurance customers are starting to move against it. At CAS Investments, the challenge is, how do I take the white glove service that I provided to my customers as an alternative asset manager and prepare to scale that by orders of magnitude and deliver that same high-level, wonderful service, but at another levels, orders of magnitude. And we're really excited to see them build that business on top of AIP for the next 5 years. At Cardinal Health, this is about providing customer success managers with the ability to understand the impact of inventory costs. How can they more efficiently suggest strategies so that they can manage their own inventory better on their behalf? And in strategic legal practices, the real challenge is around, how can I discern whether a case is appropriate, and how fast can I get back to the customer so that when they're in the mode of saying, and I want to process this, that they're able to be there and help them and bind that case. Those fill rates. At Concordance, similar issue. How do I manage the backlog of orders by identifying potential replacement parts or replacement goods in an industry where something that's seemingly simple as a glove might have 1,000 different SKU representations in that? And I like that those two things happen sort of back and forth together because they also reveal the nuance of a lot of things Shyam talked about of, well, how do you actually deploy something that looks the same, identify potential alternative goods, but deploy it into the right operating context? And that turns out to be very different for a picker that's walking the shelves of a grocery store versus someone that's helping a care provider manage their supply chain. At WestRock, this is about managing that process of, how do I take a quote, link that up with a very complex product catalog, link that up with the underlying commodity prices that drive the cost basis of that product catalog, prevent errors and protect my margins. With New York City Health and Hospitals, sort of addressing that age-old problem in healthcare of, how do I document, structure, and capture complex care routines for patients and link that up with all of the various benefit schemes and how those things link together such that I can be appropriately compensated for the care that I provide. At Renfro, it's about automating and increasing the quality of claims that they file. And at Hertz, among other use cases, managing the damages and the collections and claims on damages of vehicles. And this also extends at the very top of funnel. How do I find customers? So bringing it back to the defense context, of course, that oftentimes is identifying, this is the target. This is the thing that I need to understand. But in the commercial context, and you'll see shortly an example from Miller's Ale House of bringing that precision, dynamic, context-aware marketing at scale that's usually only been available in the pristine data gardens of the consumer internet and really moving it out into the real world. Others of you are focused on, just help me make my product and experience of engaging with me better. I think a lot of people have immediately leapt to, I want to focus on customer service. It's sort of the first place you think of, well, I'm going to have a chat bot. But what you all have said is, I don't need more efficient or cheaper customer service. I need better customer service. And better customer service means linking not just the context of what's happening with the customer and that parametric knowledge of the model, but what is the state of the enterprise and how I can support that customer. So at Rubicon Waste Management, that's processing tens of thousands of inbound emails, linking that up with the state of the deliveries in the fleet in order to develop increasing automation to be able to address those issues at scale. At Yamato in Japan, similar, how can I take inbound issues, link that up with the state of my deliveries, the state of my drivers, and all of the unstructured business rules that dictate how I should deal with any issue and provide automation leverage in order to deal with those. At Kinder Morgan, that's around managing pump reliability. In the automotive industry, significant cases, you'll see later examples from JD Power of the quality management application that they've built across their unique scale data set to understand patterns, suggest resolutions. Super cool, you should check it out. But also for our tier 1 automotive customers using it on their own proprietary data of executing that pattern of taking a warranty claim, identifying what part is likely associated with, binning that with other potential emerging issues, collecting all of the relevant data across the value chain to help me execute that root cause analysis and providing significant operating leverage in order to do that more efficiently, make all of our cars more reliable. The last theme I want to hit that is also super exciting to me is that the users of AIP are not just in corporate offices. They're out at the front lines. They're engineers. They're people doing things in the physical world, and that's very, very motivating for us as Palantir. So at Navistar, they have engineers fixing vehicles, understand how can I have access to the telemetry of the vehicle? How can I understand the contracts that dictate what services I can provide to this vehicle? How do I have at my fingertips, given similar issues, how I resolved them previously? How do I understand where the inventory and availability of parts are so that I can provide better service to those customers? You'll see examples of this similar theme in a second here from Eaton, from Komatsu, from WestTrack, where they're managing the aging of work orders and accelerating the rate at which they can fix the vehicles that they have in front of them. At Panasonic North America, as we sort of heard earlier, sort of taking this challenge of bringing Japanese engineering into the US and really bootstrapping that expertise from the ground up, where one of the critical components of their scaling is how fast can I have a new engineer be as smart in diagnosing issues as my most experienced engineer? And how can I use AI in order to accelerate that journey? And of course, for ourselves at Palantir, overhauling our entire support infrastructure to be able to do this more efficiently and better for you all as well. Final thing that I'll talk about across all these examples is that how exciting it is for us to see the burgeoning of our partner ecosystem. And one of the things we sort of woke up and realized is that the best users and the best builders on AIP don't all work at Palantir. And that is really exhilarating for us. So Accenture has built an application in order to help utilities manage critical infrastructure in the face of climate risk. PwC has built applications to help pharmaceutical companies manage the complexity of 340B double dip discounts. Jacobs building applications to use the entirety of their knowledge base to empower their frontline engineers to operate more quickly. Crisis 24 is using AIP to power part of their dynamic risk library to understand risk of exactly what is happening to my enterprise or the institution that I manage. Genpact has built a dynamic pricing solution. You'll see shortly what Sintra has built to make smart highways. You'll see Foundry for Builders partner Hence in the demos that they've seen in the demo expo earlier. And I think this is in general something that we are very excited about and very interested in investing heavily with AIP, with how do we bootstrap and accelerate the partner ecosystem as well as your ability to build your own software offerings on top of the product at pace early. Okay, I think I got through most of that. If I forgot any, it's not because I don't love you. As I just don't have an AIP powered VR player yet to remember everything yet. So now let's get into how you've obviously covered a tremendous amount of ground collectively. How are you moving so quickly? And I think there are two key themes for me on that. One is, of course, the technology, but then second, and as importantly, the process that you've utilized in order to move at pace. So first on the technology, Sham covered a lot of the underlying principles. You're going to see a lot of the demos that show why the technology is powerful. But I think one of the other important primitives that we're very focused on is how can we allow you to take the technology, add the power of the technology, and not introduce new or an unnecessary complexity into your enterprise. So it's obvious as you're thinking about these different components that you need to implement something. What we've heard from our customers is, the implementation pattern that I want is something that resembles an AI mesh. So sort of take the principles of a data mesh and extend it into those tools and applications that are now necessary. And a big part of that is add that value, but make it, again, easy to adopt. And one of the product announcements we're really excited to make today is the general availability of AIP virtual tables, which allows you to now have the power of the ontology, the ability to project that data into the narrow, stateful, decision-aware context window to power these applications without copying your data. The second key thing that Dr. Karp stole a little bit of my thunder on earlier, but he gets to do that, is thinking about like, what is the process for adopting this technology? And so first, a few of the different things that we've learned and really important things. The first one is the value of keyboard time. The one thing that we've learned, and we're trying to be extremely disciplined about internally, is if we're talking about an idea that's been written in a quip or is on a whiteboard or debating it, and it hasn't been implemented, tested, tried on a keyboard, we're not having a productive discussion. The types of things that you're going to learn by getting your hands on a keyboard, you're going to learn so much more quickly about how to build intuition to utilize this technology. Second kind of key theme is across all of these use cases, where is the AI providing substantial leverage? And one sort of simple mental model to think about is thinking about what they do as saying, I have a new AI teammate. What would you expect of a new teammate? They can do work, right? That work's probably not going to be perfect, but it's going to give you implicit scale. And also that new teammates, by doing work, going to get better and better over time. And so starting by figuring out, how do I push to production? How do I make throw that new AI teammate into the deep end with the guardrails and training and support that you would of any new teammate that you're counting on, in order to get them smart, extract the value, and start to get smarter over time. And of course, that also leads into this third major theme, which is thinking about making sure that you're attacking problems that can add value today, and then have compounding ambition to get to that skyscraper level of ambition, but not sort of falling into that self-driving car trap of waiting 18 years to say, okay, well, if it can do this, if I can get to this threshold of value from the AI, then I'm going to start to adopt it, being very disciplined about how do I start to do that now. And so what all of these learnings have sort of led us to realize is that AIP requires a fundamentally different go-to-market. And probably more importantly for you all, I think it requires a fundamentally different adoption curve. The value of getting started is so important, and you will move so much more quickly if we can reduce the friction to allow you to get started. And so our primary means of going to market with AIP will be through these boot camps. They will be efficient. They will be respectful of your time critically. And then in these boot camps, what you can expect to do is to get your hands on the keyboard, iterating, getting that keyboard time, building your intuition about how to apply AI in your operating context, and critically accelerating past that idea of chat. It's like, we'll say this over and over again, but we will help you get past chat very quickly. We'll help you decomp a business process. Where are you likely to provide significant AI leverage immediately? Where is there unstructured data feeding into a structured business process? Where is your business process actually happen much more outside of your core systems than your core systems might think? Like building these sort of easy ways so we can help you fish then and deploy across these other different boot camps. And we're seeing this sort of with great effect, where people that have gone through the boot camps are then coming back with 4 or 5 use cases 2 weeks later because they've learned how to fish in doing that. And then also have a real live initial implementation of a use case and a plan to figure out how to take that MVP and get it into production. And so we're looking forward to anybody who wants to do that. For all of you that are here, we have the accelerated turbocharged bootcamp. Can we get you through it in an hour this afternoon? I'm optimistic, but we'll see how far we can get. And for everybody else, really looking forward to seeing you at a bootcamp in the future. So with that, thank you, everybody. Now on to showing the real work with our customers. Thanks.
All right. Presentation time. This was a lot. Now it's time to see what these customers will talk about.
Everyone doing okay? All right. We got a lot more coming for you. We're going to take a quick coffee break, about 15 minutes. Get caffeinated. There's food in the back. Those of you joining us on the live stream, we'll see you right back in 15 minutes for the customer keynotes and demos.
All right. That was a lot.
Get caffeinated, even
Get
if you
that-
don't drink coffee.
Yeah, everyone. So Arnie and I will be covering this halftime, I guess. We're about an hour into this. We got 15 minutes to talk about it. First, let's talk about the elephant in the room. How did you think Carp did for the first 30 minutes?
I would say he was Carp, just Carp, but he was not very incisive. So it's like he was getting time. And I think the intuition you had is actually a good one. Which was?
Yeah, which is, So I think for those that were wondering why these random people from the clients were asking him questions, which I have never seen a Q&A format like that before. It was actually very weird. I think it was rushed. And the reason I think it was rushed is because Sampo Japan, what Arnie and I discovered 10 minutes before the event, they're not on the AIP press release anymore, which means they probably messaged them either last night or a day ago saying, hey, we can't make it for whatever reason. And so they probably had to improvise. So the improvisation was getting a bunch of these people to ask him a unique question. Personally, as much as I love Carp, I do think it was rambling a little bit too much. This one in particular was like the answers just weren't as specific. He got to the answer, but it took him a while to get there. And I think he could have just been a little bit more direct, but that's neither here nor there. What I put in the chat is Carp is a founder CEO, not just a regular CEO. And with a founder CEO, someone who founded the company, they have a certain level of arrogance and ego and communication style because they founded the company. Without them, it would not be there. They're not just someone to replace the current founder as a CEO that knows how to communicate. So
the arrogance of the F shares. You can't fire me.
that was a great quote as well from Carp.
It was very nice to see actually the shift when Shyam entered. I think Shyam is getting very, very, very good. Initially, the first appearances Shyam had, to me, he was very robotic. I struggled to follow him. He sounded very fake. But now when he speaks, he's clear. Even if I don't fully grasp what he says, I have the impression of understanding him, which makes him a very good speaker.
Yeah, I agree. I think Shyam's presentation was pretty technical. Now, granted, for the retail investors that don't understand exactly what he's saying, and like I got it in theory, but then he gets a little bit more technical, and I kind of zoned out. I think that was for the CTOs, right? At this conference, we don't know what percentage of these people are decision makers. I would argue a lot of people watching the Palantir stream and at the conference, they're not retail investors. They're actually people that like might procure the software. So to them, he was probably speaking their language. And that's all that matters because at the end of the day, he has to sell.
Well, we just need to capture the intuition. And the intuition he wanted to share is very close to what he hinted also the other time. The goal of these AIP and LLM models is not just to have one assistant to actually write you something. What you want is the search for truth first and the ability to actually operate with these models. What Carp said, I don't want poem. I don't give an F of poems. I want to operationalize things. I want to generate revenues. I want to save cost. That's the underlying thing. And to do that, what Shyam pointed that I think is very interesting is that you need to stop thinking about you have an interface with one model. You need to start thinking of at an orchestration of models. And if you have multiple models interacting with each other, and then maybe you have a further model that synthesizes everything the other models say, you get an answer that is likely to be way better than the single model provides. So this also intrinsically hints to the fact that if you provide the box AIP, then you automatically put all the other models in competition because it doesn't really matter if you use GTP4 or Llama or whatever model. Palantir wants to own the box that allows you to choose. And you see, they don't spend too much time in giving a reference to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is, at the end of the day, is just helpful for Palantir to get the fame because they want to provide these tools.
Yeah, this idea of using KLLMs, people in the chat said it's CARP LLM, so that was funny. But KLLMs is just this idea of a conglomerate or an amalgamation of LLMs being used for the enterprise and having a repository of different choices, essentially, when you ask and answer a question all in one place via AIP. I've never heard of that concept before, or maybe they talked about it a while ago, but it was kind of new to me. And that might be a very interesting selling point, because if you don't just want ChatGPT, which is what Microsoft and the competition is selling, but you can have all of them via AIP, that might be a differentiated selling point.
Well, that's something Shyam hinted the other time when explaining the vision. Do you remember that slides with a lot of violet theme? There was a part of a presentation where he once said, imagine your business like code having a lot of multiple assistants playing together.
Yep.
And I think we can match this with also the slide that the last guy shared with all the clients actually using Palantir. I don't know if you have it.
Yeah. So
ready.
let's transition to that. So let me ask the question, then I'll let you go. So first, I want to show this. Matt, shout out to Matt on Twitter. He tweeted a quote from CARP. More than 40 organizations have onboarded to our software in the last 2 weeks alone. And another 10 in the last hour. CARP didn't say this. Shasta, the head of corporate development, said this. That's pretty insane to me. And that checks out because CARP mentioned 150 organizations are using AIP. That is up from 100 as per their earnings call on August 7th. So that's 50% month over month growth. And you got 40 in 2 weeks, which is just insane growth, even if they're not making any revenue from those clients. So Arnie, what are your thoughts on that level of growth? And then here's the picture of all the new people that they put out.
If you can share my screen. Okay, I also
I got it. Yeah.
was having that. Well, my first thing was 100 is still a lot for a product that is relatively this small, this young. And the fact that they said they got additional 50 in a matter of poof is actually very, very telling. And what's even more telling, combined with what we were just saying before, is that it seems that truly AIP can be deployed at solving many different problems. So what other company can actually solve problems to this many industries, to so many leaders? They talk about foundations, or more at an ontologic level, but then more specific cases like supply chain operations, sales and marketing, customer service, continuous delivery, like something closer to Apollo. So the broad and the depth of use cases, I think, is truly strong. And obviously, when he said 140 customers, let's say 50, that means that even if they're paying for AIP just some millions, that's something that can easily add up. And as we mentioned at the initial of the live stream, if the value unlocked is in the order of billions, because these companies are actually very, very big, it is not unreasonable to think that Palantir over 1-2 years can actually start demanding 10-20% of that value unlocked. Again, we should never expect that in 1 quarter, boom, we have this value. But if value keeps compounding, sooner or later, it will become revenue. And to me, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and I think that's the goal of this conference. I mean, 150, they had 100 customers on AIP, not even customers, just people using AIP, August 7th. Now it's 150. So, a month from that, 50 new clients. And some of these clients are pretty interesting. So Cleveland Clinic obviously is on it, New York Stock Exchange, United. We knew a lot of these were clients. We didn't know they were using AIP.
Do you know Palantir?
Palantir themselves. There you go. They're using AIP.
They mentioned themselves many times, actually.
Yeah. Panasonic's on it, Hertz, NYC Health Hospitals, Lilium, Sonidex. This is a renewable energy company. Surf Air. I actually haven't heard of that one. Aramark, Sampo Japan, Fujitsu. Like, again, a lot of these we knew were clients. We didn't know they're using AIP, which just goes to show you the ability for Palantir to go to these clients, offer the product, get them onboarded, and begin the process of potentially monetizing within about 6 months once they unlock the value for those clients.
Well, a thought I had by looking at that slide was that many customers that I expected to see were not actually there. Like no BP, no Airbus, no Merck. Those are the clients that no Ferrari, like those clients were used initially to show, hey, look how cool's our client. They were not mentioned here, and we have a lot of new clients that, for instance, I never looked at, like Associated Materials, Westrock, Yamato, Renfroe. Have no idea what these companies are.
Yeah, either they're hiding Merck and BP because they don't want to give it away yet that they're using the products. I mean, we know people that work at some of those companies that said they've seen the AIP terminal, even if it's not fully there or integrated yet, or they just don't have those people as clients yet. So it's one or the other, and I guess we'll find out soon enough. Jim in the chat says, what is impressive is that they managed to get enough techs freed up to implement this new program. That's also interesting. When you implement AIP into a new organization, there have to be a bunch of people ready to help you implement it, given it's a custom piece of software. So the fact that they got those people within a matter of weeks up and running, that also is very interesting as well. Okay, I think it should be back in about 5-6 minutes, and then we'll go from there. What did you think, Arnie, about Sham and one of the points he made around AIP adoption in the context of, so we've heard him on a podcast talk about this idea of a scholastic genie. So, and it's a nice little phrase he uses, basically to talk about the levels of hallucinations that happen within these LLMs. Do you think he offered some more clarity for why AIP grounds an LLM in truth and reality? And do you think the audience kind of understood why it's so vital to have a product like that?
So if I'm understanding right, the question is, do you think Shyam was actually able to share insights on why a product like AIP can actually get you closer to the reality rather than just a model?
Yeah, given because most people assume LLMs hallucinate, and that like most business enterprises might have some they might be a little bit more scared to adopt it because they just don't think the right answers they're going to be getting, which is a valid concern, but that's kind of the whole thesis around AIP, right?
Well, I'm not sure he was actually good at explaining that for that kind of audience. I think for me it was quite interesting. I liked that sentence that reminded me something I learned at university. If you have a data set and a system that is deterministic, as soon as you put just one stochastic variable, and stochastic means that is a probabilistic variable, then the entire system becomes stochastic, meaning that you can't know anything with certainty. You have astrology that is deterministic, but weather forecast that's stochastic. And with LLMs, everything is stochastic. So you need to accept you will always have a degree of uncertainty, meaning a degree of error. But with products like AIP, you can actually take that error and minimize it. And you can minimize it by having, as Shyam shared, a lot of multiple agents basically interacting, each model hitting the reality from their own point of view. And then if you have...
I think we're back, Arnie. I think we're back. Let's see.
Here we are.
It might be a little random thing before it starts. It's very colorful, as you said before. I'll put it on mute. You can finish up what you're saying.
No, I was just saying that if you have multiple models hitting the reality from different angles, and then you have an AIP helping synthesize that, or even how Shyam shared in a video, you have all these models, and then you build a custom model that is augmented thanks to all the data that actually feeds previously. Then you have a tool that makes you hit the reality. So that's my understanding. Hopefully, Shyam will agrees with that.
Yeah, no, that's fair, especially in the context of having an ontology to ground the LLM in a reality that makes sense to spew out correct results. Little stock market update: Palantir at $15.72, up 0.77% on the day. ARM Holdings is up 17.78%. So ARM, obviously a big player in the AI race. I think this IPO doing well is good for everybody. It's good for the entire market. It's good for investors to get liquidity on ARM, and it's good for Palantir indirectly, because if AI is booming, Palantir is going to get a premium, just like a lot of the companies are going to get it. And the S&P 500 hits 450, up 0.84% on the day as well.
Well,
go ahead.
Now consider that the success of an IPO that is AI related will be watched very closely from all these companies that potentially can make themselves look like an AI company that were in the question mark of should I be listed now or should I wait? So the first IPO after a long time of market being completely frozen is very, very difficult. So bankers made it work well. I would encourage you to be careful touching these things because if they made the IPO right now, and this IPO is clearly priced relative to NVIDIA, and we know that NVIDIA has rich multiples, incorporating a lot of expectations, it is actually quite risky. This doesn't mean that it can go further, but the premise is these things are risky.
I agree. And I have Arnie's Twitter in the chat. Everyone, just a little reminder, please make sure to be able to follow Arnie on Twitter in the chat. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the IPO is successful. Obviously, up 18% is not bad. The question becomes, how long will this last? You know, tomorrow, does everyone take their profits? Because a bunch of people have not taken their profits yet, right? They're up 18%. And when we see a
would you take your
profits
if you were in the IPO?
If I actually got in at 51 and at 60, I mean, yeah, I would. What is that?
Yeah,
yeah,
I would too.
I would take the profit. I mean, again, you feel like a genius when you're up and you're green, like everyone does, and then it falls. And it's just like for a play like this, unless you believe in this for the next decade, which I don't know why you have to believe in it right now for the next decade. Then,
look, my reasoning is simple. This is a 20% gain out of nothing, and 20% is basically the growth that you can expect of 2 years of S&P 500 in a day, based on pure hype. So from here, if you stay in, is because you are betting the hype to become even bigger. That's a position where I never want to be in.
Yeah, it's a good way to think of the S&P on average returns about 8-9%. You're up 2 years of the S&P in 15 minutes if you got in at the right price. If it's not warranted, maybe you take some profits. You know, no one ever went broke taking profits. Or if you believe in it, then I get you let it run. Google's at 139, 52-week high. Any thoughts on Google right now?
I was among those guys who were actually very skeptical on Google. I like the business. I like the company. I can't say I really like the CEO, to be fair. I think he's good. He's not an alpha as I want. Like if I see Carp, if I see even Vlad from Robinhood, I feel he's more alpha than Pachai. Then you can agree with me or not, but I see him just a good enough executor. I don't see a brilliant mind there. Obviously, he's more brilliant than me, but I don't know. On Google, I realized that I was not smart enough to realize, okay, the advertising is going to skyrocket from here. I didn't have any sense, and my focus was on Palantir when it was truly a bargain. And I didn't want to bet on the fact that now Google rebrands themselves more as an AI company. So I would say at this point, I let it go. I'm very interested by the fact that they have been buybacking. So that was a very good point when it was low. And the fact that they keep buybacking shares to me is a big plus. But I also want to see how good they are at buybacking it. Are you interested in Google? Actually, you as a YouTuber, actually a more successful YouTuber than me, obviously, you should have almost insider information on how good Google prints.
I was a little skeptical as well because I got caught up in the whole ChatGPT is going to kill them, but it became very obvious that like that's not happening. It's just not.
Look, I think the best moments in the market are these moments where, like in December, Palantir dropped, and basically dropped for no real reason apart from, oh, SBC, I hate everything that has SBC. I hate everything that has software. I hate everything that is labeled growth or unprofitable. That same thing was what happened to Google when, oh, ChatGPT will kill it. Basically, you just need to have a position good enough, but be ready to strike when you suddenly have an extreme negative narrative that is detached from the reality. Pure, like that ChatGPT kills Google. In hindsight, you see how stupid it was. So at that point, unless you have 100% conviction, like I feel I have with Palantir, otherwise it is hard to pull the trigger. So unless you are very cold, like Vulture Chris is very, very cold, even if he's maybe not 100% confident on the business, then he stays cold and rational. But if you can exploit those moments, you can definitely have a lot of return in a relatively little time, because the swing Google had was actually also there. Many years of actual growth of a business.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why you picked up a lot of Palantir when it was at the values prices that you got it at. All right, AIPCon is back. We're going to hear from the customers.
Everybody, welcome back. Hope you're caffeinated. Hope you're energized. We've got a lot more content coming for you. We're very, very excited to bring our customers up on stage who, as I mentioned, are not just talking about what they're doing, but they're going to show you. Allow me to please introduce Brian.
Please welcome Vice President of Supply Chain Digitalization at Eaton, Brian Pfeifferich.
Wow. Am I audible? This is fantastic to feel the energy in this room. I don't know about you guys, but really the place I want to be right now is on a keyboard building, because of all of the great use cases that we just heard about in the morning. And ultimately, we're going to try to flesh those out a little bit more for you over the next couple of minutes, over the next couple of hours, and then get to those boot camps where we again get to get our keys on the keyboard. So like I said, my name is Brian Pfeifferich. I lead Eaton Corporation's efforts in building our supply chain digital ecosystem. And I want to start by thanking Palantir, number one, and the Palantirians that have been partnering with me in order to build this. The energy that you guys have brought to our hackathons, our workshops, the late nights on the tops of rooftops, the ability for us to really innovate with you on the ground with those that we are working with and trying to make their life better has been fantastic. So Mark, Danny, Molly, Drew, Caleb, Pierre-Louis, Trisha, many others, including Jack, including CJ, who helped me make all this presentation. This has been fantastic to work with you guys and your energy. And it's very, very exciting to be building together, to be really building our future. So continuing on, kind of the very first question that I got as I stood over there was, hey, what is Eaton, right? So we're not exactly a household name, but we are an intelligent power management company. We deliver products that manage power in the electrical, mobility, aerospace industries, and we like to say that we make what matters work. We're currently serving several markets where the mega trends are driving significant growth for our businesses, putting a lot of pressure on our supply chain. And we're one of those few companies that's actually been around and publicly traded for over 100 years. So we understand how to consistently deliver strong results for our shareholders, our customers, our suppliers, and our employees. Our supply chain, by the numbers, involves delivering over 100,000 sales orders every single day by producing those orders in 300 plants and using over 32 million parts to do so. That includes finished goods, work in process, and the raw materials that we need to buy. And we're currently doing so with over 72 ERP instances. And that's due to our aggressive portfolio management strategies that include acquisition. So it's a lot of complexity there. But hopefully you've learned a little bit about us here today, as we've got $20.8 billion of revenue coming our way, which we're expecting those mega trends to really help us take to the next level. So this morning, I'm just going to share one of several use cases that we are collaborating with Palantir, and it's related to material shortages. If you're in business, if you're part of a manufacturing company, or if you've experienced COVID, you understand what's going on when I say material shortages and all of the disruptions that can happen when you are not having the right material at the right time. Today, we face a little over 5,000 shortages per day across our 300 plants. For many of these shortages, our plants muscle through, right? They figure out how to work around these shortages to meet our financial objectives. They collaborate with suppliers. They roll up their sleeves and really figure out innovative ways to solve for these material shortage problems. But we started to truly appreciate the challenge that they were going through every single day, really at the beginning of COVID. We had a situation where at the end of the month, we had end of a quarter, right? We had a very significant miss in our revenue numbers, and it was all pointed to material shortages. Our executives said, well, where are they? I want to help, right? And we had no visibility, no ability to roll that up and say, hey, leverage your relationship with this supplier. Let's go get that material so that we can break through and meet our financial commitments. And this started us on a journey of trying to turn on our digital ecosystem with whatever tools we could find, right? Excel, email, meetings, right? All these things that helped us roll up our sleeves and aggregate the information coming off of our 72 ERPs to be able to present to the executives how they could make a difference, right, for our business. So this is a very challenging way of working, and we needed a better way. We needed to actually operationalize our data. And as I've learned with my friend Raj Daw from Komatsu, right, we needed to bring the people to the data. And that's what Palantir is going to allow us to do. So we started on our journey to build Eaton's supply chain ontology, which I formerly used to call a digital twin, right, or a common data model, until I, met a bunch of hobbits or Palantirians from the Shire, right? So this is our journey of building our ontology. Here we're going to start kind of playing videos for you, and I'm not exactly going to sort of point at them, but so bear with me. But we started by using near real-time connections to our ERP systems, the 72 instances. And started using the SDDI, right? Software defined data integration. I wish I could pause it right there. And as well as now we're starting to use AIP to create our supply chain ontology, otherwise known as Danny likes to say, the nouns and verbs of supply chain, the things we talk about every single day. And we used material experts, on-site plant visits, right? You've heard that a lot. Over the course of the morning, right, and getting into the spot of the frontline worker, we were able to get down into those plants and start to build the application that we're going to show you today, the material shortage solution that is based on understanding the revenue impact of every single part within our supply chain digital ecosystem. So the very first thing that you see on this screen with this demo of revenue per part, or our material shortage solution, is you see a full list of all 5,000 material shortages that we have across the company. We now have that real time. And then we start actually leveraging the ontology, the full power of the ontology, to have visibility to every shortage in real time, and the revenue impact of each of those shortages is dynamically calculated in real time, right? When we first started collecting the information, the very first thing we realized in that challenging situation with our executives was as soon as we collected it, it was wrong, right? So our workflow, utilizing this application that we've built, now follows 3 key stages, right? Identify our shortages, give us the ability to prioritize those shortages, and then be able to start assigning them with a complete understanding of the context under which why would we want to solve that particular problem, and we want to outfit whoever's assigned with great contextualized information about what's going on, right? We found that happening within our business as well. As soon as we asked for help, all of a sudden, right, the person assigned to help was asking more questions, right? So you kind of had this very, this very complicated set of information that needed to be transferred in order to get the help going to where it needed to happen. And given the links, right, you saw it happen faster than I could talk about, but we were able to really drill down into each one of those customers or sales orders that are impacted by the shortage that we are working with. Moving on, we then allow the assigned resource to start creating actions and ultimately start to build up our understanding of who's working on what and what shortages are actually being actioned, ultimately allowing us to manage, from a complete view, the allocation of distributed resources across our entire network, which includes people that are working globally. It includes executives that have the supplier relationships that matter. And it allows you to take action in a way that the organization is immediately updated through right back to the ontology that there's somebody working on that. What we found historically as we started working was that every day we were essentially downloading a fresh set of data from our ERP systems and having to rework on it, right? There was no memory. There was no ability for us to actually bring people to the data. We were constantly trying to manage things outside of the system, and we know there's a better way to do that. With the submitted request being submitted, right, this is kind of a manual way for us to be able to understand what's being worked on. And what we realized was that, in fact, right, we can do a whole lot more. And 5 weeks ago, we got the chance to go through an AIP boot camp. We got to go to Chicago. You saw a picture of it a little bit earlier. I got the chance to fist bump Alex Karp as Dr. Karp as we were there and learned about Tai Chi. Each alert that we were seeing had the ability for us to apply AI logic there and be able to generate solutions. So rather than, give very simple prescriptive solutions for our, people to work on, we realized that there's actually all kinds of ways that people solve problems. And we could now start to leverage the LLM to automatically create those in a way that they could be evaluated, right? With human in the loop, then the human in the loop, they could then be actioned on. And this has been really exciting to get going. And we're going to deep dive into some of the logic that's behind the AI agents that we've got working on our behalf. You've actually already seen that, but let's dive a little bit more into the details of each of these alerts and see how these options are being created. So what we're going to do next is we're going to drop into one of these suggestions, right, where we have used the LLM to find a similar part within our ecosystem, right? It's not the same part number, but it's got similar descriptions. We've sent an AI agent out to do this, and it happens in a very pretty slick way. So number one, we take a part number and its description, and we enrich it using an explainer for the person assigned, right? Sometimes it takes years to figure out our part numbers. We have 32 million of them, right? So now with the LLM, we can actually give you real language about what that part is, which actually helps solve the problem. We then pass that to a second LLM using the K LLMs that have been talked about before in a streamlined workflow to be able to go scan our organization, scan our network, scan our ontology for all kinds of available solutions that can be presented. And then finally, we use a third LLM that then evaluates those to be able to contextualize that suggestion with a, hey, we think this might really work, or hey, we think this is really not a great solution. So we're providing that back to the assigned resource with a click of a button, right? And we came up with all kinds of ways that we wanted our teams to be solving material shortages, but each one of those required them to, take action themselves. Sometimes that takes over an hour to go try all of those solutions. And ultimately, we can do that with a click of a button now with AIP. As we look, the next thing that happens is feedback, right? And this was talked about a little bit and the thing is actually the most exciting part of AIP from my perspective is that you can actually start to capture real tacit knowledge of what's happening within your plant and put that right back into your ontology, for which we have an AI agent that will go check it, right? Ultimately, this gives you the chance to do knowledge transfer from person to person as you move people throughout your organization. It gives you the chance to really understand what resiliency you have in your supply chain that you couldn't see before, and really start pressing in on areas where you have problems and can focus on areas where you don't have solutions that can be found. Moving on, before this is kind of the next step, right? Is okay, I've now got a user here who has selected a way to solve the problem, and they're being prompted to proceed, right? And this is where we can make life really easy. We haven't gotten this far yet, but we're going to kind of be demonstrating what we believe the world could be like. We can go ahead and take action upon on their behalf to proceed and execute this within our ERP systems. This is a very challenging thing to do, and we've got a lot left to learn before we do this. But today, as you write back to the ontology, you're going to learn well. As you write back to the ERP system, you're going to be making life a lot easier for our organization in terms of taking action that is available to them and orchestrating those actions on their behalf with a clear record of how those changes were made with real-time connection to your ERP system. So couldn't be more excited about where we're headed with this at Eaton Corporation. I think you kind of notice the complexity that we have, but this is just the beginning as far as I can see. And based off of what I'm learning today, we've got a lot of exciting times ahead of us. So just to summarize, together with Palantir, we're turning on the lights. We're empowering our teams to identify, prioritize, and assign materials, assign people to solve material shortages. We're offering AI-powered recommendations to resolve issues now and enabling our teams to focus on making systemic improvements to our supply chain and our ERPs to correct these root causes. And we know that there's more that we can build to enable Eaton's growth by developing more efficient, sustainable power management solutions that meet the ever-changing needs of our world. Like I said, we like to say that we make what matters work, and Palantir is helping us focus on what matters. Thank you.
That was great. That
Please
first
welcome
presentation lifted the hype.
Assistant Vice President of Business Intelligence
He was a
and
hype.
Chief Information Security Officer
great.
at CPKC, Shailesh Uram.
All right, this is a railroad company. Let's see what they got.
Good morning, everyone. I think all I have to speak is about my industry and then play the video on fast forward mode because 90% of the words, the workflow is going to be repeated. It's so common. Get the data, play through the application, use LLM. I love it. I think the key message at the end of it is the power of the framework and the power of accessibility of this framework. Remember these two words? These are not prepared. That's what I'm learning today. Okay, I'm Shailesh Uram. Yes, you heard right. I manage the business intelligence, which is innovation, as well as cybersecurity, which is governance and risk management. I'm from CPKC. On April 14th, we marked an iconic day of merging two big, giant historical railroads together, that is Legacy CP and Legacy Kansas City Southern. We now operate, or the only single line railway operating in Canada, US, and Mexico, with 20,000 miles of network. What we're going to talk about today, again, very briefly, we built a solution around network management, and potentially the biggest users is service designers. Before jumping into what we are trying to do, how many of you wondered seeing a train pass by and thought about where are the cars coming from and going to? And imagine someone is wondering about 80,000 such cars every day. 80,000 such cars. with 3,000 stations, 5,000 customers day in and day out. And there is a method to madness, and we call it precision scheduled railroading. That is a power all the railroads use. I have my fellow railroaders here. We have a love and hate relationship. Don't find any false plays. Okay, so the architects of this service, of this precision scheduled railroading starts at the design. We have a design how to run the trains. They create order in this chaotic world by giving a unique mission for every car, one car at a time. Where does it start? Where does it go? Which route it takes? What is the best possible way to run the railroad, serving the customer with the minimal cost? Sounds so simple, right? So, so there are a lot of metrics, a lot of measures which go into the mix, and some are publicly disclosed, some are internally monitored. We are going to talk about one such problem of managing dwell. Again, in a simple terms, dwell is how much time a car is spending in a yard. Yes, it is supposed to spend time, but how much is it planned versus actual? What makes this problem complex is if you're not managing the dwell, if you're not managing the volume of incoming cars into your station, right, you're not only impacting the cost and performance of your station, but you're also going to impact the incoming trains and outgoing trains, thereby entire network. And this is an age-old problem. Frankly, every railroad has this problem, and it has been the standard optimization problem for any logistics company: first mile, last mile, yard management, plant management. One day, that's what innovators are promising us, that there is quantum computing out there. All we have to do is throw the data. It'll give us what to do. I think it's 10 years, 15 years ahead of us for sure. What we're doing now is, again, stealing the words, AI-powered decision support system. We are not trying to recreate the world, means eating the entire apple, but chunks at a time, taking one problem at a time, take our data, forecast what's going to happen proactively, and give power to the user to make informed decisions. So we are using the Palantir platform to attempt that. So the challenges, as I mentioned, is it's a multivariate statistics problem, typical OR, operations research problem, and every logistics company is different. On top of that, every railroad is different. We run with different principles, different geographies, and different traffic mix. But coming to IT, the biggest challenge is how do we connect business to the models? What I mean is, how do we encode the business knowledge? Not only one time when we build the applications, but incrementally as the business changes and evolves. The second problem, and the toughest problem, I think someone already spoke today, is how do we get those models to business? How do we let them adopt and adapt to these technologies and trust them and not make the technologies obsolete? We hope we have found a formula to do that. We have done it in various ways in technologies, and this is another attempt. And I believe we cracked the formula this time. So we love maps, railroaders, all the railroaders. So here we have our CPKC network in 3 countries. And we already loaded our data into our ontology, 10 years of history. We have a forecasting model running on the same platform, telling 5 days to 14 days out where could be the potential problems. And these are all the alerts, and a user, whether it is service design user or an operations user, can proactively see what could happen 3 days from now. And again, there is a math and science to it. Math is you have something coming your way, all you're saying is when is it coming. Science is how do you put external factors in? How do your historical performance in? How do you say what happened when there is a snowstorm in the east? How is it going to impact the west? I think all those models are running in the background to give this prediction. I'm not going to show that today. Assume we are starting with the alert, and this is AILET, a station near Calgary, one of our key junction coming into the west. So what we can do here is we can zoom in and exactly find out what's happening at AILET and what is the alert saying. In a nutshell, you have some numbers there. What is the average dwell? What is leading to the alert? It is 44.2 hours it is predicting. Again, it is notional data. Please do not tell any analyst on anything. We are all perfect. Okay. So what we're doing is, okay, no one, executives or decision makers wants to know what is truth behind it. So we give the trend, and there are a bunch of screens which are not visible in the video, but historical actual volumes and historical actual dwells so that they can link back to operations. And then the next question is, how do I address and solve this dwell proactively? And remember, this is all 2 days out or 3 days out. So the traffic is already en route to you. It's not that you can stop the traffic. Some of it is already coming. Some of it customers are about to release. So what we ask in the next step is the co-pilot agent, whatever we call, but the AI agent to say, can you find a solution to me? And this is where the magic is. As I think Brian spoke, we already encoded some intelligence. We're asking some questions, build a plan to reduce REL ALIT, and let it run, and it is computing. But what is critical here is we have not loaded our entire intelligence yet. We have loaded some of the levers which we have in control while the traffic is en route to reduce it well. So with the knowledge we shared into the bot, it has come up with a plan. Again, it has 2 steps: build a bypass block and hold a train. In a nutshell, the first step is saying, make sure the traffic is not getting worked in this station, do the work ahead of time. Second point is saying that, okay, there is a train which is about to start 800 miles away, stop that for 14 hours so that I can clear my yard and make smooth operations. I might like it, I might not like it. But the difference here is, whether it is a new service design user or an experienced operator, you're already coding the core fundamental business metrics into it. Whether he looks at it or not, whether he or she chooses to acknowledge it or not, we are showing the local impacts as well as the global network level impacts. That is the power of AI. When people say that it is going to pre-calculate and share it with you, it's up to the human. And next step is, I think, we like the model or we don't like the plan, what it is building. And we are trying to simulate, yes, show me the results of your plan. It showed that, okay, the dwell is reduced by 2 hours, but it is comparing the base scenario with the new scenario put in, and it is showing the metrics so that we can challenge what is the cost. We are only showing 2 metrics or 3 metrics here, but eventually imagine you're showing the cost metrics, operations metrics, as well as the commercial metrics to it. So the next step what we built is good. We have one suggestion. We choose to take it or ignore it. But we are saying, what is the impact of this decision overall? And here there is a complex chart, too small to read. In a simple nutshell, on the left side, you have all the stations which these trains or the suggestions are going through. Each blue block is an amount of work. What it is telling me is, at the St. Paul, it has 3 yellow boxes. And those 3 yellow boxes are extra work someone else is doing to help me recover from my traffic congestion. And I saw the summary of it. Basically, it is saying you have to build 2 more blocks. Blocks is nothing but a group of 10 cars, 40 cars, or 100 cars, sometimes if it is a unit train. But I know as an experienced railroader, St. Paul is critical. I cannot put more work at St. Paul. So I can go back to the co-pilot and challenge, what can you do by ignoring St. Paul and by not giving more work to St. Paul? So that's what we're going to do here. I think I skipped it. So, okay. So we put another constraint. I think the key here is, I can repeat it again and again, but the model has been trained by pre-existing levers, but now you're also taking real-time information from the operator and including it in the modeling and scenario. But it's not only one time. You're capturing what was the problem, what was the user doing, and what kind of scenarios he's running with it, and what was the result of it. All of it is storing back into the ontology, into the knowledge base, where we can, or whether the same person or a different person can refer back to, and this is what is called building the knowledge base for the future. And then we know exactly which levers are impacting, how much they are impacting, what is model-driven versus what is operator-driven, what is data-driven technologies. So now we regenerated another solution. It is simulating, and we are also saying, what if I threw in more crews and more locomotives? We added this third scenario just to explain adding more crews and adding in more locomotives is nothing but adding more cost. That is the last option we want to choose as railroaders is, again, PSR is run an optimal railroad with all the optimal resources. So if you're adding more crews, more resources, it might be beneficial only for certain points, but not all the time. So the model goes back, calculates, and shares with you the cost impacts as well as the operational impacts of the decision. And imagine you ran 3 scenarios in a nutshell, and the end user is able to say what are the results of each scenario, but not only for once. All the scenarios, all the results are stored forever for this metric, for this particular station. All I have to do it for 2,000 more stations across North America. And each station is unique, and each journey is unique, and we are embarking on a journey. It's not a one-time solution, but we are encoding intelligence piece by piece into this process. What I like, again, is the framework. We are building digital twins of the data. We are including the forecasting models on top of the data in the same platform. We also giving LLMs or easy way to interact with the models and the data by taking real-time inputs. In a nutshell, we're building for the future on a platform where we think it is scalable for the future. That's what we are doing at CPKC. And again, it's notional data, Mr. Railroaders. Elite is perfectly fine, and we are right on the right track. Thank you.
Please
That was another
welcome
good one, man.
Head of Innovation at Sintra, Jen Duthie.
This was another really good one, in my opinion. First two presentations have been pretty awesome.
I struggle to follow this one.
Hi, good morning. It's so nice to be here with everyone today. I'm learning so much, and there's just so much knowledge and excitement in the room. This is my first AIP Con, or my first trip out to the Shire. Excited to be here and tell you what we're doing. So first, what is Sintra? Sintra is a global leader in transportation infrastructure. We operate mostly toll roads on four continents. A lot of our business is focused in North America, and the demo I'm going to walk you through today is on a toll road that we own and operate in Northern Virginia. Okay, so Sintra not only has a long history in transportation, but we also have a long history in innovation. We actually operated or built and operated the first automated open tolling system, which, fun fact, is 407 in Toronto in 1997. So we continue that innovation tradition today, and our focus lately has been on smart roads. So we heard a couple times this morning about where we are with automated vehicles, and I thought that was a perfect segue into what I'm going to be talking about. So we've been hearing about automated vehicles for many years now, that they're almost here, they're almost here. What we're focused on is, what do we need on the roadside? What is the digital infrastructure that we need along the roads to facilitate all vehicles? So even if we start having fully automated vehicles tomorrow available, there's still going to be those of us that don't have them, right? So we need to be thinking about, what is the digital infrastructure along the road that can help those automated vehicles get where they need to be. They can actually operate throughout all different conditions, all different operational design domains. And how can we make everyone's journey more safe, from the no-frills, low-end car owners to the owners of the vehicles of tomorrow? Okay, so what I'm going to be showing you today is our work within Foundry on I-66 outside the Beltway. It was a road that we designed, built, financed, operate, maintain in partnership with Virginia Department of Transportation. It's a 22.5-mile corridor. And we built within Foundry what we call a VIA. So it's a smart roads platform for the future. So just to give you an intro into what we're doing here. Yes, okay. So what we're doing in AVIA is bringing together data from many different sensors along the roadway. Here it's showing where our LiDAR and camera sensors are, camera with AI perception in the background, are along the roadway, as well as our ride sensors, which is a proprietary IoT radar device that if you come to our expo, you'll get to see in person. It's kind of cute. But we have a dense deployment of those ride sensors along a 2-mile section of I-66. So not only are we pulling in data from sensors on the road, we're also pulling in third-party data. So this is showing an example of using Waze to have other data sources. Waze data is not going to be real time. It's not 100% accurate all the time. But what we're doing with Foundry, and what we found a lot of value in this relationship with Palantir, is the ability to pull together many different disparate data sources and get the most accurate, most reliable information to our road operators and to our drivers. So next I'll show some of the use cases that we're doing. Right now we have 12 use cases operationalized within Avia. And we can customize which use cases we want to show. So different customers might be interested in different use cases. We might want to focus on only showing wrong way driving events or only showing pedestrian in the roadway events. You know, what are the most critical top priority use cases? All right, so I'm going to walk you through an actual demo. We've been doing this quite a bit in I-66 as we work to operationalize this. These are, in the bottom right corner, this is one of our traffic monitoring cameras that we have on the road. So we actually have crew members that are going out and helping us by doing some of these use cases that are safe to do in live traffic. In this case, you see someone slowing to a stop, and in real time within Avia, we can see alerts come up for low speed vehicle, and now stop vehicle popped up. We get to see which sensors detected it. We know the accuracy of the different sensors, and we have a proprietary algorithm that fuses that data and tells us, okay, yes, we're 90% certain, we're 99% certain that this event is occurring. The third use case that I'll show you today is a pedestrian in the road. So we have the driver of our vehicle gets out and walks along the roadway. Obviously, this is a critical use case for us. We want to make sure that our operators are watching cameras all the time, but you can imagine people in an operations room, how long it takes for them to notice that an event has occurred. It could be 20 minutes have gone by, it could be more. And in that time, negative consequences can occur. And so if they can know in real time that there's somebody out on the road, maybe they had a stalled vehicle, they got out, then we can send out help right away. And that can not only make our operations more efficient, but it can save lives. So we see that the pedestrian detection, but the pedestrian was detected by the camera in this case. If I sat on this slide longer, we would see it detected by the ride. The smaller ride sensors have a higher latency when detecting pedestrians. Okay. So taking a step back, what we're doing here is using AI to make sense of the data that we're ingesting. So in the context of Avia, we need to be able to do this very quickly and in a matter of seconds. And with Foundry, we can integrate and evaluate models and deploy them for large-scale processing in real time. So through the partnership, through the relationship with Foundry, we have models that show events, and it shows the probability of events. So depending on which sensor has detected it, maybe the context, right? In rainy days, some sensors are better than others. At nighttime, some sensors are better than others. So we can take all of that into account and bring all of this together in real time to calculate the probability of an event, and then customize our tool and its usefulness for our road operators as well as drivers. Maybe you don't need to know that there's a slow vehicle unless the probability is very high and it's definitely going to affect you. But if there's a wrong way driver, I want to know, even if we're only 20% sure, right? So that I need to be looking out for that. Okay, so I wanted to show this. This is an example of how we're using Foundry to not only pull in data, but also push out to different sources. This is an app, NextPass, which we use for collecting tolls in Virginia. This is a pre-production version of the app that we're just using for connection with Avia right now. But if you have this NextPass app and you're driving along the road, then we have the ability to automatically send alerts to you. So in this case, top priority alerts, such as there's a pedestrian ahead or there's a stopped vehicle ahead, those are getting sent to the app. And the bottom right corner is a GoPro from within the same vehicle that has the app on it. So we can see as they approach the event, and then they go past it, and then we're no longer getting the alerts, we're on the move. So in closing, I just wanted to talk a little bit about where we're going. We are using AI within our models. We're getting a lot of value out of Palantir for pulling in the data streams in real time. That was a collaborative effort to really make that functionality happen. And we're looking at making use of more of these AI tools to create reporting is one of our next steps, right? So we have a lot of real-time value, but also our traffic management center managers need to be able to know that there's certain types of events happening more than others. When do they need to increase staffing in the traffic management center? Our road operators or planners might need to know, where are we having hotspots? And so the sensors and all of this information can give us important analytics into where do we need to think about changing the geometric design of roads. And as we go out and we bid on new projects and build out new roads of the future, how do we build them so that they're even safer and even more efficient? And having all of this data at our fingertips is going to help us do that. So just want to thank you all today for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure, and come visit us at the expo and learn more.
I prefer
Please
this
welcome
one.
Senior Vice President of Care Transformation
Yeah.
and Innovation at
This-
HCA Healthcare,
Similar to
Dr.
Ouija a little
Michael
bit.
Schlosser.
But we'll probably analyze it later. All right, this is a big one. HCA Healthcare.
Hello, good morning, everyone. It's great to be up here. It's really exciting to be at an artificial intelligence conference. I, about 30 years ago, was in school as an engineer and really was excited about technology and AI. It was just burgeoning field at that time. And then I got into one of those phases, you go through phases as a teenager, and decided I needed to be a doctor. And so, took a little detour for 25 years, but I'm glad that I'm finally back kind of where I started, and in a room with so many amazing people doing so many amazing things with technology, and excited to share with you a little bit about how we're going to apply this, or we are applying this technology to healthcare delivery. So I think it was said really well this morning that we're, as CT&I, which is my team, Care Transformation and Innovation, we're building the solutions that our hospitals and operators need, not necessarily the ones that they're interested or think they want. But we're tackling some really huge problems in healthcare. And I wish that I could tell you that I had pulled these images from like an archive from the history of healthcare, and that what I was going to show you today looks like the videos that all the people who just came from before me had. But unfortunately, these are pictures we've taken from our own hospitals here probably in the last year. And so, as was also mentioned this morning, healthcare is kind of behind. We're trying to catch up, and I think the Palantir team has done an amazing job helping HCA Healthcare catch up using its technology, and AI is going to be the thing that leaps us forward. But this is where we're starting. We're starting with very manual processes. We have 90,000 nurses, 300,000 colleagues across HCA Healthcare, 185 hospitals. We have the privilege of caring for 36 million patients a year. And so it's a lot of people, and it's a lot of individualized processes and people doing things the way they've always done them in very manual ways. And so the challenge that we have is, how do we take that and how do we apply automation? How do we redesign processes to take advantage of technology? And so to do that, we've built a purpose-driven team, which we call Care Transformation and Innovation, that's multidisciplinary, that wakes up every day thinking just about this problem. How do we tackle some of the biggest rocks, the biggest challenges we can see in healthcare? And how do we go into our hospitals and do it with the bedside caregivers? And our Palantir team has been amazing in that they've joined us on those journeys. The engineer has been in the hospital sitting at the nurse's station, at the elbow with the caregivers, so we can really understand their world and their problems, because they hang on to what you're seeing on the screen, not because they're just stubborn or because they don't like technology, but because they have people's lives at stake and they've figured out a way to do it. I had a nurse leader once tell me, yes, this is all a mess, but it's my mess and I know where to find everything. And so when we go in there and we're going to disrupt all of that, we have to do it with them, and we have to design those solutions in a way that they're willing to take advantage of it. So the phase one of this was tackling staffing and scheduling. So how we staff our units, how we decide which caregivers are going to take care of which patients on which unit every given day, is a huge problem, and it has enormous amount of variation. And so over the last several months, we've built a solution, we call it Timpani, that can automate that process. We take in all of the data, and I think, oh no, it's on the next slide, but we take in all of the data that describes that entire problem, describes the nurses and the other caregivers and their preferences and how they like to work, and a whole bunch of other data predicting what the demand is going to be on that unit, the cost of various different decisions we can make. and it builds an automated schedule that tries to balance all of the needs of all the different people involved. The patient, of course, importantly, but the entire care team, the hospital, even the CFOs, we try to make them happy as well, and build a schedule for every single unit that can meet all of those changes. So we've deployed that solution, and my colleagues Ben and Kanan spoke at the first AIP Con a number of months ago about that solution. At that time, it was in 4 facilities, about 50 departments. Since then, we've been able to scale to 9 facilities, 150 departments, and it's building better schedules, in particular when the people can get out of its way, when they can give it the data that it needs and have that data be accurate, and then take the advice from the automated system and actually use those balanced schedules that it builds, we get really good results. And we see that the nurses are getting their preferences. We have the right care team members to take care of the right patients at the right time. Our goal for next year is to scale this to 400 departments, 40 facilities, hopefully in the first half of the year. We've set a target date there of May 2024. We'll see if we can make that target date. Just like everyone, the ontology is critical to this process. This clearly is not the entire data ontology. This is a piece of how we represent this problem in data. But that was one of the first big challenges, was how do we represent this entire problem inside a data ontology? And so again, I think Alex kind of described it well. This is a lot of hard work. It's not necessarily a lot of fun, but once you've built it and you have the problem represented in this way, it's pretty cool the things that you can do with it. So that first stage of this problem, building that better schedule, I think we've done pretty well inside our product. The second phase is what happens when reality occurs. And we've built a great plan, but the plan sort of meets reality and things change. And now we have to manually update that schedule or manage that schedule over time. And that's a solution that we call intelligent staffing. And then I also want to talk a little bit about another offshoot of this entire process that AIP has allowed us to create, which is called Bedside Shift Report. So this is a view of our product, Timpani, and this is the scheduling view, right? So we've built a schedule here now, and I know there's a lot of small numbers here on the screen, but the bottom is the schedule, and it's all the different team members and then the various shifts that they're scheduled into, and the colors represent whether we're scheduling them on a date that they asked us to schedule them or they preferred to be scheduled or not. And then across the top, you see all the details of how well we're balanced. How well is the schedule that we built, and we do these 30, 45 days in advance, matching the demand that we predict is going to be there, that we predict using a machine learning algorithm. And this looks like a fairly balanced schedule at this point, but then as I said, reality is going to happen, right? There's going to be a COVID outbreak and a daycare is going to close, or there's going to be increased demand because flu season occurred earlier than we expected to, and then we're going to get out of balance. And so how do we tackle that problem? Well, the rules-based engine is pretty good at tackling it unit at a time. Like it can kind of look through an individual unit and say, well, there's an extra nurse on this unit that hasn't filled all of their shifts yet, and so we can use that person to fill in. And so we started with a rules-based algorithm to try to figure out how to fill those holes. But when you get to multiple units or an entire hospital level or even entire market level, it gets really complicated really fast. And so the timing here was terrific because as we were beginning to tackle that problem, AIP came along, and now we have a tool that's really capable of managing those kinds of problems in real time. And so this is a view of the AIP assistant that is looking at the entire schedule for an entire hospital, and it's continuously monitoring for these problems. And so again, you see across the top the balance between supply and demand, if you will, of nurses and patients that we predict are going to come. And we've, in this example, run into a problem, or we're about to run into a problem where the demand is going to get shifted, and we're not going to have the right nurses on the unit to take care of those patients. So here you can see sort of its baseline state where it's reviewing on a constant basis those forecasts and the schedules and making recommendations about what changes we might want to make in order to maintain our balance or to improve the balance. So now we're going to fast forward here, and we're going to inject some variation into what's going to happen. And in this example, we're going to see and this, again, this is just a sort of a made up example, but we're going to see we have a new patient scheduled for bariatric surgery, probably added to the schedule somewhat last minute. And now we don't have the right balance on a unit to take care of that patient. In this example, we're saying we don't have the right proficiency of one of the nurses to handle that specific type of patient. So the AIP has noticed that that's a problem, and it's making a recommendation. It's saying, hey, there's a nurse on another unit who has that proficiency. We can float them over. And so it's going to go ahead and follow that recommendation. But then as it floats them over, there's some consequences, right? A few dominoes that are going to fall here. And now I was recommending to staff up on that unit. You can see that on the far left-hand side. But now with this move that we've made, we don't need that anymore. We have actually more than enough nurses on that unit. And so we don't need to make that recommendation. And so it's taking that recommendation away and moving forward with floating that nurse from another unit. And then what the system actually can do is notify these nurses directly on its own. And so it can send a text message, oops, it just jumped forward there, directly to the nurse saying, hey, would you be willing to switch from Tuesday to Thursday? The nurse can reply to the system and say, yes, I can switch. And then it can go in and make that recommended change. Now we've set it with rules so that if the change that it's recommending it make is something outside of our boundaries, like it's going to create overtime or it's recommending using contract labor, we can put in a human in the loop stop there where the nurse leader has to review that change before the system can go ahead and send the text message and make the recommendation. But we are going down this path of automation because this is not part of our nurse leader's current workflow. If I back up to how does this occur today? Well, it doesn't, right? We build a schedule, and then probably 4:30 in the morning before a 7 a.m. shift, the nurse leaders are looking at who are the patients I have today and who are the nurses I have, and then they're trying to figure it out. They're like, oh, we're 3 nurses short on this unit. We're going to float someone over from that unit. It's going to make them short, but it's the best we can do. So this was not a process that they were engaged in, looking 3 days ahead, 7 days ahead. And we tried to do that manually and say, let's have the nurse leaders go in and interact with the rules-based system. But we're then adding workflow and we're adding steps to their process. And so in the end, an AIP agent that can do what we would be asking the nurse leaders to do, be constantly surveying the schedule. In fact, it can do it much better because, of course, our nurse leaders would never have time to constantly survey the schedule, can be constantly looking for these opportunities, constantly figuring out where are the best moves that we can make, actually make those moves, send those text messages and get agreement from the nurses and keep the schedule consistently balanced. And then what it's showing you on the right-hand side of the screen there is the ability to have an audit trail where we can go back in and we can see exactly why did it make the recommendations that it's making? What were the reasons? How does it improve the balance of the schedule? Because we know that transparency and auditability are critical, especially in the healthcare space, especially if we're going to be giving an AI the ability to take some of these actions on its own. We've got to be able to make sure that we can go back and see why it did it. And then, of course, that will also give us the opportunity to give more feedback to the system so that we can understand if it's making changes or recommending changes that we don't think or the nurse leaders don't think are the right ones. We can go in and provide that feedback and correct it. So I'm quickly going to pivot to the bedside shift report. And so I mentioned this was sort of an offshoot of this process. So through that day of assignment process where we're figuring out which nurses need to take care of which patients, we have something that occurs that is called shift handoff. So you'll have entire new shift of nurses coming in. They've got to get the handoff from the outgoing shift. And they got to, in a very short period of time, figure out who are these 6 patients that I need to take care of, what's going on with them, what do I need to be worried about, and how do I manage them that day? And it could be a patient they've never taken care of before. So once again, this is not from a historical record. This is, I know this looks very 2023 to you all, but this is how we currently do it today, which is a manual process. The nurses are taking notes, they're collecting this data throughout the entire day, and then using a tool like this one to hand off, which is highly variable, but it's also a ton of data that we're losing, right? This is all gone when they throw this piece of paper away. So what the Palantir team has helped us build with a lot of help of my clinical operations team, many of which are in the room here today, is an automated shift handoff tool powered by AIP, where the AI is being given access to an ontology that describes a patient in the medical record. So the nurse's notes, the physician notes, the laboratory values, new imaging results that may have come back. And we've taught the AIP that ontology and what all that means. And now it's able to understand that. And then through prompts we give it where we say basically, hey, you're a helpful agent who's building a bedside shift report. It's able to create this view for our nurses that shows them all the patients they're taking care of. I'm going to advance here. And then it can go in and show them, here's the demographic information that you might be interested in. It's going to click here to another screen in a second, and it's going to show a timeline. And so this is something that would have taken the nurses a long time to create manually, but this is a history of what happened to that patient over the last 12 hours or 24 hours. You can see it's going in and highlighting some key information that the oncoming nurse is probably going to want to know as they take over care for this patient. We have in there the vital signs. You can see they're highlighting what the blood pressure is, which is normal. It's got lab values, including highlighting the ones that are abnormal. The nurses told us that's critical. You need to bring the most important information sort of up to the top and have it be readily available and highly visible. And all of this was done through just a number of prompts, training this AIP on what the data is and what the nurses need to know in terms of developing a bedside shift report. So we'll go back here to the timeline. And then what it's going to show you here is back to that idea of transparency and audibility, in that, you know, anytime we're doing something like this with an AI in healthcare, we need to make sure that there are no hallucinations, that there's nothing that's kind of not consistent with what's in the medical record. Obviously, we got patients' lives at stake, again, as I mentioned. And so the ability to have the tool show us exactly where it found the information. Like if I say this medication was changed, here's where it is in the official electronic health record, and be able to click in live in the tool and show that that's the case is critically important. The other thing it's showing you right here is some of the live interface where the nurses can actually ask it to edit the report and say, in this timeline, I want to know more about the medications. And so the AI then goes back in and it adjusts the timeline to show more details on the medications. And then you can see it's showing you the click through to the source information where we can show exactly where that information came from. The last thing that's really critically important in these types of use cases is QA. So this is a process that will occur tens of thousands of times across our hospitals on in any individual given day. And so in addition to the nurses being able to sort of audit and click through and be sure that the report that's being created is accurate, we need an automated system, a QA process, that we can make sure that we don't have model drift or changes or hallucinations. And so we've been very thoughtful with the Palantir team around how are all the different ways using, in some cases, AIP to test, or AIP or NLP to perform checks, that we can have an ongoing process of auditing and QA available. So just to finish up, we started with staffing and scheduling. We've now scheduled over 100,000 shifts, approximately 6,000 hours of time saved on the nurse leaders. That led us into the concept of intelligent staffing, where we can balance shifts more accurately, but also close that loop and make the changes in real time. And then that opened up the possibilities of what else can this AIP system do to support our nurses in their workflow, which took us down this pathway of bedside shift report, where we can take another manual process, highly variable, highly important and risky part of care delivery, and apply technology and automation to help them do their job better, do it safer, and continue to return our nurses to the bedside so they can focus on taking care of patients. So with that, I'll finish. Apologize, I ran a couple minutes over there, but just a lot of really exciting work that I was excited to share with you all today, and look forward to interacting with you all for the rest of the conference. So thank you.
Okay, Arnie has to go, so you can get out of here, Arnie. Thank you for being here. Everyone follow Arnie on Twitter in the description. See you next time, Arnie. Thank you.
Thanks to you. Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.
One more round of applause for our morning speakers, demoers, presenters, customers. All right, we've got a lot more cooking for you. As you know, we've got a very, very busy afternoon. Hope everyone's ready to be hands-on keyboard. My phone battery is dying from the number of people on the live stream that are signing up for boot camps, which is very exciting. So we're excited to have you guys working later this afternoon. A lot more stories to share, and let's get to lunch.
I think that's the conclusion of the live stream for AIPCon, because the other presentations are going to be done in private sessions, I believe. I don't think, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it. That should be pretty much it. Yeah, because after lunch they have their private session, so that'll be it for them. I'll giving my thought. Yep, it's done. Officially done. Streamed live 2 hours ago. Okay, it's done. All right. So this is the official recap of AIPCon. Thank you, 584 people, for being here. At some points during the stream, we had more people than the actual Palantir live stream, which is just insane that you guys showed up to see me and Arnie kind of cover this. So really appreciate everyone being here, and it means a lot to me and to all of us as a Palantir community. Again, this is no fun if we're not all in this together and trying to figure out how this is ultimately happening. I'm going to give my recap here and my thoughts. So about probably 15 minutes here of my overall thoughts around what I got from AIPCon, and then we'll keep going from there. So first thing I'll start it off with is I think the presentations did what they needed to do. In the morning, my presentation was my analysis around AIPCon was primarily what I'm looking forward for is customers showing use cases within the software that gets me excited enough as a shareholder to believe that they will eventually pay for the software. For those that don't know, Palantir has made zero revenue from everything we understand in their financials from AIP, which means all the revenue they had, $233 million of commercial revenue and $300 million of government revenue last quarter, all of that was Foundry, Gotham, and Apollo. None of that had to do with AIP. But they announced that AIP is obviously in the mix and they got a bunch of customers working on it. So my expectations, and I think every expectation for shareholders today, was, do we see enough use cases from these customers that are presenting things that make us continue to be bullish as shareholders, that eventually, as 93 TMC points out in the chat, revenue will explode? Because that's really what it means to be a growth investor, right? I know a lot of people are like, well, Palantir only has 13% growth so year over year, so how is it a growth stock? And we'll talk about those concerns in a little bit. But really, being a growth investor, if you look at Tesla's stock chart, not to compare it to Palantir, they're two different companies, but flat from 2014 to 2019, and in 2019 there's an explosion. And the reason that happens, and if you were patient during those 5 years, is because you knew something the rest of the world didn't. Tesla, I think, was a lot more complicated than Palantir. Palantir is actually a lot more simple. B2B software for the enterprise enabled by AI and machine learning. Is that going to explode revenue for a data analytics company when data is the new oil, and every company in the world, from railroad companies to healthcare enterprises, need to be able to operationalize all their workflows and modernize? I think the answer to that question is yes, which means if the answer to that overarching thesis is yes, the question becomes the execution from a business intelligence perspective of what Palantir is going to be able to do to capitalize on that overarching opportunity. And the opportunity, or the strategy they have gone forward with, is let's give the product to customers for free. Let's have them use it. Let's let it be embedded in their system. And then we will ask for money. The critique of that has been, well, how long do you need? When are we going to get revenue growth? Like, are you actually getting market share in the meantime? And I think some of those concerns are valid. The understanding, if you read between the lines, is, holy crap, if a company like HCA, which we'll talk about in a second, has, forget 400 facilities, 4,000 facilities using AIP, what is that worth to them? Who has the leverage in terms of the negotiation of being able to charge for that product? And are they ever going to use something else other than Palantir? We saw this play out with Foundry over the past decade. And if we saw it play out with Foundry, I think the same thing can happen in the context of AIP. So a couple first things I want to talk about, and then I'll get into some of the customer presentations, and we'll end it off there. Number one, I think the biggest thing that we have to discuss is the growth rate of AIP. So on August 7th of their Q2 earnings call, Palantir had 400 organizations in the pipeline to use AIP, and 100 out of those 400 organizations, so about 25% of them, were actually using the product in their organizations. We have a tweet here from Matt, who is quoting Karp. Karp said in the beginning of the conference, more than 40 organizations have onboarded to our software in the last 2 weeks alone, and another 10 in the last hour. Sorry, Karp didn't say this. Sasha Spivak, the head of corporate development, said that. That's pretty interesting, because if you have 40 organizations onboarded to the software in the past 2 weeks, well, that's really unique to me, because then on top of that, Karp says we have 150 organizations that are using AIP. How many are paying for that? I think 0, but 150 of them are actually using it, which goes back to the strategy of, do you think that's a good strategy? I think of it in the context of the numbers. That is 50% month over month growth. They had 100 on August 7th, 150 on September 14th. And what you're really seeing here is more and more people that want to try something that enables LLMs and business intelligence at a, on a steroids in the context of what it could do for your business and how it can change everything when you're using AIP. And they want to use it in a safe way, a secure way, a meaningful way, and something that gets results. As Shyam Sankar said, the CTO, not proof of concept, but proof of results, which was the entire point of the conference and the entire point of the breakout sessions they're going to have in the next couple hours, which is, can we show customers are getting results 12 weeks after launching this product? And if that's the case, we can get a crap ton of signups to these boot camps, which is what the person said at the very end of the call, because there's a lot of people that are interested. They are excited about the nature of what this product could become for their organization. I do think at some level, the conference was a little technical here and there, but that's okay because I'm not the guy buying AIP, right? I'm not the one procuring it. There's going to be a lot of CTOs and CIOs that were probably in conference and that were probably watching the conference online that are going to have to make this decision. And if they're the ones that are making this decision and they can understand everything that's going on and they can really see the differentiated points from something like a ChatGPT for enterprise or what Databricks is doing or what Snowflake is offering, if they're offering anything like this, then they're the people that ultimately Shyam Sankar and Alex Carper were talking to. So top level thesis on the conference, the results we got signal that in November, when we get Q3 earnings, we are definitely going to see growth on AIP on the client side. I mean, by then we'll have another month. So theoretically, if they're growing at 50% month over month, you'll get close to 200 customers by then in terms of their growth on the actual customer base of AIP. Maybe there's going to be revenue growth. I highly doubt it. That's likely going to happen in 2024. But again, as a shareholder, I truly do not care about revenue growth. I mean, and I don't think that's naive to say. It's more so in the context of LLMs and the concept of LLMs in terms of the mainstream world were announced a couple months ago with ChatGPT. Now every enterprise in the world is trying to figure out how do we implement this into our business. And in a couple seconds, I'm going to talk about some of the client presentations and how they're using it. But the diversity of clients, whether it's a railroad company, a sensor data company, an insurance company that are deciding that we need to use this because there's a meaningful impact. I don't think it's smart to be able to say, hey, pay us $1 million right now, and then we'll give you access to the software. When the client themselves is like, bro, we don't even know how to use this software. Like, can you be a partner with us? Can you help us understand it? Can you build custom solutions with us? Can you send us some forward deployed engineers so I have someone to talk to every day so I can figure this stuff out? One of the guys in the first presentation, Eaton, which is a company I never heard of before, very interesting company. I mean, he literally said the Palantir guys came to his house, metaphorically, and they worked with him. He's part of the executive leadership team in terms of the innovation part of the company to figure this out, to just map out a strategy in the first place. I mean, I don't understand going to the customer and be like, yeah, we're only going to talk to you about one of the most innovative things you can do to transform your business over the next decade when you give us $1 million. It's just, it's not the right way, in my opinion, to go to market. I think Palantir is correct on this go to market. They've got to be correct on the execution of monetizing these clients, which means the product just has to be useful. But as for what we saw today, I think the product is useful. And as a result of that, there is going to be a benefit for Palantir and AIP. Now, a couple things I want to talk about, and then we'll end it out in terms of what I saw from the presentation. So the Eaton Palantir presentation, I highly recommend people watch this one. I think this was the best presentation I saw. And the reason this was the best presentation I saw is because Eaton, they basically said they were losing a crap ton of money and missing financial projections because of missing parts in their supply chain. So they weren't able to live up to certain expectations because their supply chain was a mess. And so the person on stage says that they scrambled and tried to merge Excel sheets, emails, and Zoom meeting transcripts, for goodness sake, to have some data-driven understanding of their business. So this is a company that's like, what data can we compile to try to have a better understanding of why our supply chain is in such a mess, which is hurting our bottom line profits. Then they got a hold of Foundry and AIP. And the presenter explained every unique and important use case of being able to actually implement an ontology and then have an LLM on top of that to be able to understand what to do in their business when it comes to optimizing it from some level of a data-driven standpoint. And he ends it by saying, this is just the beginning. And it's presentations like that that made me realize, okay, so there's certain use cases for companies that we haven't even thought of that are unique to the company themselves. This one deeply rooted in supply chains that Palantir is not only solving for these guys, but they're transforming the potential revenue growth, cost cutting, all of that stuff from a business perspective for these companies. And so that first presentation, I highly recommend people watching. I think that was one of the best presentations that we saw. Then we had the CPKC presentation. For those that don't know, CPKC is a railroad company, and it is the only railroad that going through the United States, Canada, and Mexico. So this presenter showcased how critical AIP was for for solving real problems. They basically showed AIP giving recommendations via chatbot, which is the LLM, of stopping a train in real time for 14 hours in order to solve other problems on the railroad, along with 3 other routes of action. So they basically gave it a ton of data and they said, look, here's all the issues going on right now through the 20,000 miles of railroads we have. How do we solve this stuff in real time? And the goal was to show AI enabled by AIP solving the problem after throwing a ton of real-time data at it, but also the creativity involved in solving a massive railroad problem and how that could be done with AI. The creativity part of this also really matters here because a lot of AIs and LLMs, they hallucinate. They don't give the right answer. They don't have any data governance. They don't have any security and confidentiality in terms of helping people to understand where the data is coming from, why the data is coming from in this place. They don't have an ontology to connect to make sense of giving results that are grounded in the reality and context of your organization. And I believe the unique thing about this presentation was it's a railroad. I mean, it's like a train, on a railroad. Like this is like, how do you solve these types of problems? And the presenter was talking about how they used to go through a ton of, manual things that they needed to do to try to figure this stuff out. Ultimately, implementing something like AIP that has the granular access controls to create the guardrails, and then on top of that, giving real-time AI-enabled recommendations. That was one of the most unique use cases I saw at the entire conversation. Think of it like YouTube. Right? YouTube is the reason a lot of you probably found this live stream is because it popped up in your stream, right? YouTube is a recommendation engine at scale. And the reason AI is going to enable YouTube to only grow and grow and grow, right now it's doing about $30 billion of revenue per year, is because the recommendations are going to get better. And when the recommendations get better, more and more people are going to be able to use this. I am building a startup right now, Audia.io. It's in the background. If you haven't signed up for it, sign up. Let me know what you think. And it's an audio recommendation engine at scale. We are trying to solve the discovery process around audio by enabling real-time recommendations to help creators get discovered. So AI enabling YouTube to give better video recommendations, it's a pretty important use case. My startup, I mean, I think it's pretty important, audio video recommendations, but it's nowhere near as important as making sure a railroad doesn't crash into or a train doesn't crash into another train on a railroad because of some inefficiency that is happening on a given day. Like that's the real operational use cases of AI that are going to be worth hundreds of billions of dollars in the future for various companies. And the presenter of that railroad company was actually making a joke because there were other railroad companies and their CIOs in attendance. They obviously came because they wanted to see this specific keynote. And so he was saying, look, don't hate me, but we're going to beat you guys. And the reason we're going to beat you guys is because we got the software. And this software is transforming our entire business at the end of the day. So that's why it was also really important. Captain PC gives a good comment here in the chat. No way ChatGPT for the enterprise could handle this type of complexity. We would be having a East Palestine incident daily. You're talking about what happened in Ohio. So I don't know if ChatGPT for Enterprise is as complex and as advanced that can handle the nuances of what I saw today. Maybe it can. I'm going to be objective enough to say I don't know enough about it, and I'm not just going to say it can't. But from my understanding, the way I've heard about ChatGPT for the enterprises, it's like a Excel on steroids, right? It's like enabling people to do more with some of their Microsoft products, not necessarily what Palantir has created with AIP. And so as a result of that, I think there is absolutely a market opportunity here. They've got 150 organizations. Why aren't they using ChatGPT for the enterprise? Right? Why aren't they using Databricks' product? Why aren't they using Databricks, by the way, acquired a company for $1.3 billion on the private markets that is very similar to what Palantir is doing with AIP. They had to acquire a company to even get a chance to build a product like AIP. AIP is out in the real world. There's 150 freaking companies using it. Like, I think a lot of people that are skeptical on Twitter, a lot of people have these Twitter fingers going back at some of my posts around Palantir and their growth. Look, you can have your Twitter fingers right now because you have 13% revenue growth, but if that revenue growth explodes, which that's a risk, but if it does explode, because there is a path to seeing exploding over the next 2 years, because they got 150 people in 12 weeks, 150 companies, executives at those companies to use this product and embed it in their organization, then it's a really simple growth story. Get market share, eat some shit for a year, and then you profit off all that monetization because you finally turn on the spigot when it comes to making money. And it's a simple growth story, but it will take time to execute at the end of the day. And a highlight of why that will be able to execute is HCA Healthcare. This was a presentation I was also incredibly excited for. This is one of the largest private healthcare healthcare companies in the United States. They handle insurance, facilities. They do a lot of stuff when it comes to healthcare. It's a very, very big company. Here's one of the presenters saying that, look, we had 50 departments and 4 facilities using their Palantir AIP product on June 1st, on the first AIP con. So they probably got it in April and they started working on until June. Today, so September 14th, they have 150 departments and 9 facilities using it. I think 9 facilities might be actual hospitals or different organizations, but 150 departments throughout those hospitals. Their H1 goal, so first half of 2021 goal, is 400 departments and 40 facilities using Palantir's AIP product that they made in conjunction with HCA. So the question becomes, for those concerned about monetization, which I will stress is a real concern. It's just, if you're going to be a growth stock investor, some of these concerns you have to be able to rationalize if you're investing in a company that you think is going to grow. And my rationalization is, how valuable does AIP become when it's in 400 or 4,000 or 40,000 departments all throughout HCA across the entire world? And if it's worth a lot, maybe, just maybe, it makes sense for Palantir to not be quickly trying to get revenue and be like, hey, we need to like get our quarterly results, so please give us $500,000, just give it to us so we can get these quarterly results, so we can show the shareholders that we're growing so much, but rather let them implement the product in so many hospitals that HCA has no choice but to commit to the product and pay for it over the next decade. I mean, if for free by H1 2024, I'm going to have 400 of my facilities or 400 departments and 40 facilities using your product, yeah, when we have a conversation and negotiation about what we're going to pay for it, and it's embedded within the operational workflows, imagine having to get rid of all that because now I don't want to pay the extra 500,000, the extra million because I'm being stingy. When in reality, the value the product is bringing to the organization is tens of 20s of millions, whatever it may be, because the product is so valuable. And then if I get rid of it, I have to go figure out how to implement ChatGPT for the enterprise. It's just, it's not realistic, in my opinion, to expect them to monetize immediately. It makes a lot more sense to be like, hey, let's get some audience loyalty, right? Let's get customers to care, and then we'll end up being able to charge whatever we want for it because we're going to have the leverage. It is no different than building a YouTube channel. I think so many people on YouTube are like, how can I monetize my audience? How can I start a Patreon? How can I get them to buy my course? And it's like, bro, can you even name 20 followers on the top of your head? Because I can. Because I see them every day. I interact with them every day. I actually care about them. I know about them. I text with them. I DM with them. Like, I'm actually trying to build an authentic audience. I'm trying to play the long game here as a creator, because most people don't last more than a couple of years, because it's really hard to create content on a consistent basis and have an audience that authentically cares about you, especially when you're trying to monetize them in the early stages. My career on YouTube is very similar, I see, to Palantir's AIP, because if you get the audience to care, they'll be willing to actually pay you $10 a month or whatever in the future, but give them the value first. Show them that you're actually relevant in their lives and that they don't need to watch another YouTuber before you dish out asking and begging for $10. I think that's the same thing with AIP, quite frankly. And this conference to me highlighted enough use cases within the software for me to be more convinced as a shareholder that there is the room for AIP to monetize if they can keep growing the customer count, even if the revenue isn't growing, because eventually the revenue will grow. And the unique thing about this is they still did $233 million of commercial revenue last quarter, because Foundry and Apollo is selling enough, and they're going to do $557 million next quarter without having to monetize the AIP, because they have enough governmental contracts, enough commercial contracts, US commercial going 37% year over year, to be able to ward off monetizing AIP, because they've built other products that are doing very well as a public company. And to me, I think that makes a lot of sense at the end of the day. And I just think that strategy is not some unique original strategy. Go for market share, don't go for profits. It's not unique. It's not original at all. But it's the right thing to do when the world just figured out what an LLM was 3 months ago. I mean, like, you ask the regular person, what's an LLM, what's ChatGPT? They're not going to know how to answer that question. Like, it's not Google yet. It's not synonymous with search. And so if enterprises are trying to figure out how to get ahead of this stuff, they're not going to be ready to pay you a couple $1 million if it's worth even a couple million. What if it's worth 10 million? Because they don't even know what its use cases are in the organization at all yet either. And so I think that's the really important strategy for Palantir, and that's what they ultimately have to do. Right now, S&P is at 450, Palantir at 1577. The market's going to close in about 40 minutes, up 1.12% for the day. Look, the stock didn't jump super crazy. It's up 1%. I think it could be down 1%. It really doesn't matter. I don't think the conference had a major impact. My concluding thoughts are, I think the people watching this conference that were decision makers to procure the software got a little bit more interested, dare I say a lot more interested, to figure out how they can use it in their business. I don't think we've seen something from ChatGPT or Google that is what kind of Palantir announced in AIP. Maybe something similar, but not exactly the same. And the people that went to this conference, the people that are watching this conference, are inquiring around Palantir for a reason. Again, 40 new clients using AIP in the past 2 weeks is insane growth. And maybe that growth doesn't continue. Maybe it's even crazier than 40 clients in 2 weeks. I have no idea. I think AIP conference will definitely accelerate that growth more. We will see in the numbers in the next month or two when they have earnings. But that's the bet I'm taking as a shareholder. And I think a lot of people need to understand the bet that they're taking as shareholders, because if it works, it's going to work. And you're not going to see the revenue growth coming, but it is going to come because they had the ability to set up that foundation in the first place. Cool. I think that's pretty much it for me. I've got a lot to go into and try to understand. I got to go a little bit more. I heard they announced some products and stuff. There's a lot that was at this conference. The one final thing I'll say is the reason why CARP had to answer so many questions in the beginning, we actually found out today. One of their clients that was supposed to be presenting, Sampo Japan, couldn't make it because the president of the company was fired or stepped down today because of insurance fraud over a motor scandal. So that's likely why Sampo Japan said, yeah, we're not going to do any presentations today because our president is stepping down. They have to deal with PR crisis management. And so that's why they had this random, like, hey, ask CARP a question. Hey, ask CARP a question. They tried to take up 30, 40 minutes trying to cover for that time. That was the reasoning for why that ended up happening right there. Okay, that's it for me. A lot of coverage coming on AIP over the next couple of days. Palantir Weekly, Friday night. We will talk about it. Today's what, Thursday? Today's Thursday. Today's Thursday. So tomorrow night, we'll talk about it. If you got any value from this, please subscribe and be part of the community. I do a market open live stream every day for around 90 minutes, Palantir live streams. I hope you guys enjoyed the content, and follow on Twitter if you want to be on Twitter. A lot of live tweeting on Palantir there, so you can catch up with me on Twitter. And if you can like and subscribe, that would mean the world to me. Look, this was awesome. I think this conference made a lot of sense. There's a lot to dive into. The clients made a lot of sense. There's over 30 companies presenting in these breakout rooms, so hopefully we're going to get a lot more insights from what's going on there. But I think Sham did a great job explaining it. I think a lot of the Palantir people explained where the growth is going. And I think CARP, although he's rambly at times, did a good job explaining what the opportunity and the magnitude of the opportunity is here. And now it's just a question for them to execute. And all of us get to be on the ride for this execution. Either you're on the ride or you're off the ride. And if you want to get off the ride, you can get off the ride. But what I saw today makes me more excited to be on the ride. And given how few companies are out there that are really solving AI-based data analytics at scale, and how many thousands of startups are trying but will never get to the level of a Palantir, I think Palantir is one of those companies that I want to bet on. And so I'm excited to keep covering them, and I'm very grateful that all of you came to watch my coverage and be here with me, because it makes it more fun when we're all here as a community. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you on Palantir Weekly tomorrow night, 11 p.m. Eastern. Bye, everyone. Thank you.